Conservation Commission. The commission and commissioners are appointed by the Board of Selectmen to implement the rules and regulations of the State Wetlands Act and the Milton Town Wetlands Bylaw. As a matter of formality, we record everything here, so there is a tape recorder.
On that.
Oh, I have to start over?
No, go ahead.
Well, we're in mid introductions here, and we always introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan.
Michael Bluth.
Arthur Doyle. Craig McNaught.
Ingrid Beatty. Jackie Bowen.
And as a matter of also a formality and as part of the open meeting law, we'd ask that if you come forward and you want to speak, you are certainly welcome. And we'd ask that you introduce yourselves so that the tape recorder knows who you are. First on the agenda is a notice of intent in the Ponset River Stormwater Project. Anybody here from Mass Highway? Seeing none, I think we have a Saturday meeting, a site walk, and we have directions as to where to go and where to meet. And this is a public meeting that we have given notice of, and we will be meeting, I guess, at the... Oh, it is. It's across the street. It's...
We're going to meet at the parking lot by the
Yes. I'm reading
Truth,
this.
right? Not the
Kathy, am I correct? We're meeting in the DPW, the state DPW or Mass Highway yard on Granite Avenue. And then we'll, as a group, cross the street safely and take a look at the area of land adjacent to the on-ramp to the expressway. And the purpose of that is to look at the plan for discharging water that's running off of the expressway, and they're going to put in a detention system so that the petroleum products don't kind of sweep off the expressway and end up in our Atlantic Ocean. So that will be, we're starting at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, which is the 18th? 16th of May. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, notice of intent, 0 Central Avenue. And I believe the applicant is here. Welcome all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome. Could you introduce yourselves, please?
Katie Conlon, member of the Board of Selectmen.
Liam Clark, Planning Director.
Emery Fagan, Town Administrator.
Can you get us up to date on where the town is on the demolition plans for the Hendry's plant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, when we were here at a Saturday meeting a few weeks ago after you'd had a very long day.
That was a long day.
That was a very long day for you. We, at that time, there was a discussion of the demolition permit, which I know has been, was voted for the other portion of the building at 131 Elliott Street. And there was some discussion about the length of time that, in order for the buildings to be demolished concurrently, the length of time that the town might need. And we suggested we would need 90 days, and we, I believe the commission continued us until tonight for a status report. So the status report is that since that Saturday meeting, we have entered into an amendment to the demolition agreement with Carrick Realty Trust that includes some, I didn't bring a copy of it with me tonight, but it includes some language relating to the access point that the demolition contractor would use to access the property at the end of, the west end of Elliott Street. And it also extends the demolition date through July 31st, which was the 90 days. So that's where we're at, and...
So that's good news. You've got access to the site, and you've got a time frame within which it can be accomplished. That's
We're making
news.
some progress.
Good, good. Well, and if the public doesn't know, at our last meeting, we did issue a demolition permit to the applicant at 131 Central Ave, I'm sorry, Elliott Street, which is the same project. That's the Hendry's building. So this will allow the coordination of the town and the Conley group to get this thing done. Right?
Yes.
All right. Now, does that mean you can move forward with your demo contractor?
We spoke with the demo contractor last week. We're just waiting for the Conleys to sign on with the contractor, and we'll move forward.
Well, we're waiting for some additional information that we'll need from the contractor once we sign up with him to finalize our application and to the Conservation Commission. And once we have that, we'll be able to get the remaining items that we need into the Conservation Commission, hopefully before your next meeting.
Okay, that's good. Question?
Well, just, so there's nothing at this point that's stopping you from signing the contract with the contractor, with the demolition contractor?
The building inspector has had some discussions with and probably Mr. Clark have had some discussions with the demolition contractor.
But those are detailed level information about how they're going to do the work? Or is that,
We
Can-
agree with him, he agrees with us.
okay.
And as soon as he has,
So we're moving forward, and I think we'll have something for you, a better update for you at the next meeting.
Okay, is there
Our
a chance?
demo contractor was on vacation
Uh-huh.
for a period of time, so we tighten up there's a couple of amendments to the contract, and then we'll be good to go.
Okay, so, Mr. Conley we approved the demolition proposal from Mr. Conley at the last meeting. So by the sounds of it, there's no reason not to proceed with this.
Yeah, I think they'll probably speak on their end, but just relating to Zero Central Ave, we're in discussions with the demolition contractor, and by the next meeting, we should have more information to report to you at that time.
Good.
So I think we've made some pretty good progress in the last few weeks.
That's a good thing. Any other
Good thing.
questions from commissioners? Arthur, Craig?
I'm just very happy to hear the progress.
Good. Ingrid? Members of the public, abutters or members of the public, any questions, comments, suggestions? Hearing none? God bless you. Thank you. Next on the agenda is notice of intent, 131 Elliott Street, site development. Hey, good evening all. Welcome. Could you introduce yourselves for the public and for the records?
Sure, Peter Freeman, Freeman Law Group, representing the applicant.
Phil Cordero, Allen and Major Associates.
Stephen Connolly, applicant. Chris McCarthy, Allen and Major.
Welcome to all. Actually, before we get off onto the site development, can you add anything? We just heard, I think, good news from the town. Are you in agreement and moving forward on the demolition?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. What can you tell us about the site development?
Phil, I think maybe you should summarize, either Phil or Chris, what was submitted based on last hearing where you were looking for some more information on trees and planting.
Right.
We have done that, so either one of you.
Yeah, we provided, and I gave Kathy some hard copies, but we had provided three pieces of information. One was showing 2 or 3 options, or 4 options actually, for location of replacement trees to mitigate the cut-down tree, so to speak. So we issued that, and we can discuss, which location the town prefers. I included some info on the type of tree we selected, as well as updating the planting plan to include that same type of species to mitigate the tree on the site.
All right, you mean, is that a red oak that you had suggested?
Yes.
I didn't, and I know when I looked at it, I wasn't aware of thank you.
What's that?
On the second sheet that you gave to us, and I don't, yes, that one. I don't have a size on this, or do I?
Well, it's on it's on their 4 to 5 inch calipers. It's on the plan, the large plan. Yeah, I updated the, it's rolled up, but.
Well, I've got it for the large plan at 131
And
Elliott
that's what
Street.
That's the same, we would use that same size. We use 4 to 5 inch caliper, and that's what we would do for the, we'd have 3 in total, 2 off-site and 1 on-site.
All right.
So we're suggesting a 4 to 5 inch caliper.
Just so that you're not misled by anything that I said, we do have a performance standard that's 3 to 1, but we're talking about an extraordinary tree. It was 250, 300 years old, and the caliper was 6 feet, 5 feet, 60 inches, 66 inches, something like that. That's an unusual tree. I know and I understand, and I'm not suggesting that you'd have to replace it in kind, but I know I was talking about something significantly larger than a 3-inch tree. I mean,
Well, we did 4 to 5. And, you know, you
Four-
get 4 to 5 inch caliper, right.
we're talking about a 66-inch tree.
Right.
And you're talking about a 4 to 5-inch
Right.
tree. I think we're in different ballparks.
But as we discussed, you know, on the Saturday hearing, you know, when you get much bigger than that, you're talking more of a transplant. And, you know, it's risky that it's going to survive if it's that big. If you're talking 12 inches, that's not getting something from a nursery. That's finding it out somewhere, finding a specimen somewhere, digging it up.
It is, and there are operations who do that and do it
There
well.
is, but you're going to be limited, and I'm not going to speak for the landscape contractor, you're going to be limited on the warranty he's going to get. So, you know, in a year, if that thing doesn't make it, you got to buy another one. You know, and
Yes.
that's really not what we want to do. We want to get it in 5-inch, 6-inch caliper. That's a nice sturdy tree, and it's available at nurseries to readily get. And that was the problem. The existing tree, when the whoever it was that identified it was a black oak, and we can't find black oaks, especially at that size. Even 3-inch caliper looked everywhere. They're just not around.
All right, well, I know it's difficult. I just wanted to make sure that, that we were talking, you know, we're not talking at cross purposes. Because, you know, we regularly deal with people that cut down, you know, pretty small trees and have them replaced. And we just went through, I think at our meeting on the Saturday that we met, we had some discussions about whether or not it was going to be, you know, 2.5 or 3.5-inch caliper trees. And I had envisioned something larger than that. And one of the difficulties I think that I had in expressing myself was that I know there's a big difference in cost. And I understand also the difficulty of getting a warranty on the transplanted larger tree. I do understand that. We actually considered taking down the tree at the library. It was a little bit out of our jurisdiction, but because of a previous project we had, it was actually within our jurisdiction. So we took a look at that and we said, well, how much is it going to cost to replace a tree of that size? That was the large beech tree at the parking area. And Kathy, we had asked Kathy to go out and see if you could get an estimate for what it would cost to bring in a 12 to 14-inch tree. I think that was it. And the response we got back was that just to give us an estimate, they wanted $2,000 per site. And we were talking about 3 different sites. So we got it wasn't a bill, it was just a proposal, that in order to get a cost estimate for 3 locations, they wanted $6,000.
Yeah.
And I
That's a
was
major
shocked.
operation. You've got to close traffic, you have to have police
Right.
details. I mean,
Right.
you're transporting a building down the middle of the street that you got to deal with power lines.
This was just to look at the site.
Oh, just to look at the site?
Yeah.
To see what
Well, I'm
it
sure
would
they're
be
looking at the
priced
site was analyzing what they got to do to get it in there. And that means.
That's correct.
by. Right.
You know, that means, you know, we got power lines, it's like moving a building.
Right.
So,
Just say it can't be done.
you know, it's,
Right, but that's why I think we're at cross purposes. You're at the, I know when I said 3.5, you said, I think 3.5 is actually on your landscaping.
no,
plan.
it's, we've proposed 4 to 5 inch.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, but I think the consensus, I believe, was that we were looking for bigger trees. And you don't have to agree with us at this juncture, but have you calculated the cost of bigger trees?
No, sir.
All right, and I don't mean to pick on you, Steve, but have you thought about that? Because I think we're at cross purposes here. We're thinking much larger, and you're thinking much smaller than we are. And I know there's a cost factor that's important to you.
Well, that tree, we've talked about this before, that tree was down in the business district overhanging Ellis Street. It had to be cut down. That's where I'm having a hard time understanding where you're coming from. It's not a tree that was out in the middle of Hutchinson's Field that you leave there and let the branches fall off. That was a hazard tree. It's a documented hazard tree. A true arborist look at that tree. It had to be removed. Now, technically, I was 189 feet from Pine Tree Brook, on the back end of the gas station. I was over 200 feet from the river. So, you know, the thing is,
It was,
at some point, it's
it was
189.
within our 200-foot
Right, it was
riverfront.
189 feet, but the thing is that it was a safety hazard. It had to come down, and I don't understand why I'm not getting any acknowledgement for that.
Well, oh no, we don't acknowledge that, because not only did you not seek permission, which is a statutory requirement, in addition to that, and in our sense, Ken Nade will testify, and he has testified in open session, that he asked you not to cut it down, and you did. Kathy Bowen was present, and she asked you not to cut it down, and you did.
We've gone
But
through
we
that
don't-
as well,
I
John,
know,
you know,
and
and I told you my position on that, that tree was cut before the commission showed up and told me not to. Now, that's just the way it is. And you can ignore that too if you want, but the fact is that tree
No,
was
no,
cut.
we're not, I'm not trying to throw up a roadblock. I'm just trying to give you a sense of where we're coming from. We're bigger than, in terms of tree size than you are. And we don't need to resolve that. We don't need to, get into a fight over that, so to speak.
Good.
Yeah, that would not advance the ball, and we're interested in advancing the ball.
Okay.
But just from my own perspective, and I'll ask for comments here, that I'm thinking bigger trees, and that means bigger costs, and I need to know whether or not you've considered that, if that's part of your plan. Would you be willing to incur something larger to advance the ball?
Well, what are we talking about then? Why don't I hear what people have to say, John, yourself and others on the board?
I'm in total agreement with John in terms of the scale of the tree. We're not talking about a 5-inch tree. We're just talking about something that's significant and notable in itself when it's planted. But the other thing that I'd like to see is a tree that has the potential to become a legacy tree and actually grow to be, I'm not talking about a red oak. I'd like to see a tree that has a significant stature over its life, that has the ability to become a tree. And I'm not sure what species that is, but there are species that have a more significant dominant kind of development over their lives.
I only chose the oak because that's what was cut down.
Well, I understand, but I'm just saying that we have an opportunity to plant something that has the opportunity to improve and I think your proposal for the sites, I think that's kind of exactly what we're looking for. We're saying we're not sure where it's going to go, but it wants to be something that's going to be notable and, a significant tree.
We can change the species, we can mix up the species.
Right,
you know.
but I think it's not, a 3 to 5 or 4 to 5 inch tree is not what we're talking about. And the idea that it is a transplant, I think that's exactly what we're talking about.
Arthur, what do you think?
He's just going to be finding it.
Two thoughts that I'd like to put on the table. Having some proximity to nurseries and knowing that there are trees that are transplantable in excess of 5-inch calipers that are viable trees. I think it's worth exploring what species would fit geographically with a little bit of a larger caliper and with certainly no guarantee, but a sense of survivability beyond maybe a foot caliper that probably would have very, very little chance of surviving what is not a wooded area space. There are a lot of environmental issues there for survivability of a tree that we have to acknowledge. So that's one thought. In addition to that, my mind is saying we might be able to do something in combination with some multiples. So yes, we have a 3-to-1 ratio, but maybe with a reasonably sized caliper there that has a better chance of survival, we have some multiples for a couple of other locations. We want to put about 3 different trees in the library area, for example.
Sure.
So I think we should look at what some of the options are around those two possibilities, what reasonable prices might be, timelines and so on down the line, and come back to the table with that information and come to a resolution.
Well, does anybody have a better sense than I do in terms of what the cost would be of let's say, a 12-inch tree or 14-inch tree?
Mr.
You, Craig?
Chairman, I mean, all we have to do is contact Wallace. This board approved moving 2 14-inch trees at Wallace Golf Course. All you have to do is pick up the phone. What's it going to cost you to move the trees?
Where did they move them?
They're moving them from point A to point B
On the golf course.
Right.
That's a little bit different
That
than
is
sticking.
That is
I
different,
think
yeah.
that's the starting point.
Yeah.
You get soil variation,
What?
a whole host of other.
The cost won't be relative.
Right.
There's so much more involved.
You don't know how much of the cost is actually dealing with the road. I mean, dealing with power, I mean, you move a house, you've got to move power lines out of the way. If we're talking about something that's on that scale,
the majority of the
Depends on where you
work,
put it.
the majority of the
Sure.
work is balling it. You got the root ball.
I would argue that that's
Okay,
probably not
fine.
true, because they have hydraulic spades now. They come in and they'll drive it in, and they basically go dig the hole with the spade, they use the spade to dump the dirt, they go dig it up, and they keep it in the spade until they plant it, and then they remove the hydraulic spade. It's not, I don't think the balling it is the issue. I think it's physically moving the tree that's the issue.
Right, and then you have to locate the tree or the trees. Where's the nursery? Distance from there to
I mean,
here?
there are experts locally in Massachusetts that do these
Sure.
sorts of things
Absolutely.
routinely. It's just really a matter of cost.
Right,
And
for transportation.
those who do it well are experts in doing it, and they have a high success rate. I think part of the question is location. I'm just looking at the locations proposed here, and I think there's not enough room for the type of tree. I agree with you. We want a showcase tree because a showcase tree was removed. And we want something that will be memorable. So one is size, but two also is location. This is an old photograph. I think the
Yeah.
beach here at the library location,
That's right.
the location in front of the library is inadequate. That I think the library, in addition to the public, wishes to keep this open space because it's a wholly different design.
Right.
This old photograph shows the beech tree that is no longer there. That's a difficult location, though, as you know. It's going to be difficult. That would be an ideal location for a showcase tree, but it's a difficult place to pull it off because of logistics of water and space and root development and that sort of thing.
And there are power lines on that side, which is.
Yeah, it's
why the existing
unfortunate,
beach is
but that would be
intact.
ideal.
Right.
But I think it's not going to work there. Does anyone disagree with me? Do you see what I'm saying here? The
Yes.
beech tree that we took down? Sadly, that's, for lots of different reasons, that's not going to work. The other proposed areas on the other side, I think will not support a tree of the size and of the public access visibility that we're thinking of.
Is that location 1 or 2?
1 and 2.
Neither one of them would,
I don't think
Why?
they're gonna, I think there's not enough room there
for,
a tree that's gonna grow large.
Does anybody know what the library plans are in terms of the parking lot? Because at one time, they
Very
were
good
going to
question.
change that location where the beech tree came out.
They're gonna do a turnaround. I don't know if they've gone any further with that.
That was a proposed idea. I mean, the library would be an ideal location because of the visibility, and it would make the town of Milton happy.
maybe build.
What about
Would be good for
location
the town of
2?
Milton and good for you.
What about location 2 at the library, which is not where the beech tree was, but is actually on the right as you come in,
Yeah. And
Which-
pulled back from the power line.
which is
Right.
pulled back and it's off to that side, and
I agree, and we walked that, and we identified that space as a location for at least 2 trees
I
of,
think it's
about 4-inch caliper, so one larger tree might.
better, but it's shadier, and it's still limited in space. Maybe we take a look at it again.
well, when you look at the photo, it appears that that's a large open area, and
It
they've
is.
centered it they've centered the proposed location in the center of a large open area. Granted, there are other large trees around it, but
Right, there's this border, and this is east, this is west. I think visibility is key.
I agree. I don't know if that, I don't want to get bogged down, because we're making good progress, and I think we can continue in that vein. But I'd actually like to ask if there are any abutters or members of the public that have any comments, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, because this is an entire site development, but in terms of the tree issue, I don't know if anybody wanted to make a comment or ask a question at this point. Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Hi, everyone. Gene Irwin, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 9. I had great appreciation for all the hard work this Conservation Board does. However, I do feel this tree discussion is not fair. I grew up on Adams Street, Milton Hill, climbing big, beautiful trees. European copper beeches, giant pine trees, hundreds of feet tall. The one thing I quickly learned when you're climbing these magnificent trees is watch out for dead branches. Later, fast forward to my working down at GKR as a real estate agent. Right there next to the plate, I used to park under that tree. And I used to bless myself every time I got away from the darn thing. It was dangerous. I also, in my phone, I'd be happy to show any of you after this meeting, pictures of myself a few years ago when the thing was taken down. My standing inside what's left of the tree trunk with my feet end to end like clown shoes. That tree was rotted desperately. I also have business property in that neighborhood, multifamily, multi-units. My insurance company comes by routinely last 5 years, says, hey, you got a month to get rid of those trees. Get them away from your house, get them away from the parking lot, or we're canceling your insurance. I say, it's absolutely, I think, a double standard here. I've noticed trees cut down up at the Poor Farm. I counted about 100 of them. Small trees, but 100, which add up to a lot. I've counted tons of trees cut down at Uland Skating Rink. I've noticed trees cut down from along the railroad tracks from along Elliott Street, from Steel and Rye up to Adams Street, hundreds of trees. Nothing was ever said. I've seen a lot of other developers.
We were pretty deeply involved in that. We have an enforcement order against the city of, not against the MBTA, and we have a consent agreement with the MBTA for doing just that.
But this tree was in fact a liability, and I say as a property owner, you can't look the other way. You have to deal with it. And, you know, to me, I wish this town had a better record of getting things done at 131 Central Ave, or Elliott Street. This has gone on for way too long. I support the town and their future development of this project. I support Carrick Realty. I'd like to see something done, and I think it's incumbent on all the town to move this forward. There has been a new selectmen's race. I understand things between both sides are going famously, and I'd like to stay on track and get this project developed. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you. Anybody else like to make a comment? Come forward, please.
Hi, my name is April Anderson Lamoureux. I am a Precinct 4 town meeting member, and I live at 249 Brook Road. I don't really have anything specific to say about the tree or the replacement of the tree, but I just want to talk to you or share my comments just more generally about the project and my feeling about the consensus of the community. My job, just to back up for a minute, I'm an economic development practitioner, and I have been for 20 years. And my job with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for some time, I was the state permitting ombudsman, and I worked across a variety of permit issuing agencies, most frequently with the environmental agencies. So I want you to know that I'm here with a deep respect and admiration for what you do and the contribution that you make to this process. But very generally speaking, I'm down in the Central Ave Business District every day. With my children, we go there for walks, we're there all the time. To see this blighted building still standing just gets on my last nerve. And I know that this has been a very long process, and there's obviously a lot of history with the tree and with other things, but I just like to keep it in perspective that there's been very large, very contentious projects built in the Commonwealth in the time frame that this one relatively complex or modestly complex process has been underway. And I would very much like to see progress here. Every time I'm down in Central Ave Business District at the plate, sitting there running into neighbors, I'm commenting on how wonderful it is to see people meeting up on the street and how much that project has brought to the area and how much I'm looking forward to seeing the Hendry's project redeveloped in whatever capacity it is, because I honestly believe that no matter what goes there, whether it's a mixed-use project or this 40B, that it will improve the environmental integrity of that site astronomically above what's there now. So I just ask you to please keep that under your hat as you go through this process, and if we could please move it forward in an expeditious fashion, I think the community at large would be very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very nice comments. Anybody else? Yes. Come forward, Katie, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Katie Conlon, member of the Board of Selectmen. What I just want to bring to your attention is something that we've talked about before at the last two meetings we had in April. We've said publicly that the Board of Selectmen and Carrick Realty Trust are engaged in discussions for a project that is not the project that's shown in this plan here, for which a comprehensive permit has been issued, but for a mixed-use development that would combine the town's parcel with the Carrick parcel, and on which would be constructed a commercial and residential development. In the course of the discussions with the developer, and I understand where he's coming from in saying this, a comprehensive permit has been issued by the Board of Appeals. This is the final step in the process of the 40B project, is to get a site development approval under for the 40B plan, the Affordable Housing Plan. I understand, and I think it's reasonable for the developer to take the position that having gone through the expense and the time of going through the process, which was a months-long process, I'm sure it was quite costly for the developer. I think it would be for any developer to go through the 40B process. Having gone through that and received the comprehensive permit, no appeal having been filed, that is now a final order. This is the next step in the process for the 40B development. And the developer's view that has been expressed to us is that they'd like to finish up this project before they would move on to discussing and completing a discussion with us for a different plan that personally I think is a better plan for the site and I'd like to see developed, but we're not going to get to that phase until we're able to resolve the issues here. Steve can correct me if I've said anything incorrect, but that's kind of speaking just as one member of the Board of Selectmen, and obviously you have statutory jurisdiction that I'm not here to speak to. I wouldn't pretend to know all the laws and the conservation issues that you deal with, but that's the big global picture that the Board of Selectmen is working towards, and I just ask that you keep that in mind as we go forward through this process, and perhaps that can shed some light on what the bigger picture here might be. As important as the tree is, that there's possibly a greater good that can be accomplished at this site if we can move the project, if we can move these stages forward. And I would respectfully ask that you consider that as you're deliberating this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I should probably clarify a point, and you actually just brought it out. At least from my perspective, and I think some of the others that have spoken, it's not about a tree. It's more about preserving open space, and the tree happens to have represented an area of open space. So when we look at it from the environmental perspective, it would have been nice if if they had asked permission to take the tree out. But we can get by that. I am more concerned with preserving the open space, and the tree represents a portion of that. Now, what happened was when the tree went out, the area was filled with building. That's why I thought that and I actually had a chance to look at the mixed-use proposal from, I guess, a number of years ago. That looked pretty good, actually, because it had more open space that we're looking at from the environmental perspective. The tree is only representative of open space. It's not a tree for the tree's sake, necessarily. And Steve, for your benefit, I had, I think, in previous meetings suggested that, gee, if you had the town land, that would be great because you'd have more space to give us back what we consider to be open space. I was not trying to put pressure on you for that. Whatever you do with the town is your business, and I respect that. But what we're confronted with right now is a plan that looks to me, given the land that you currently have, it's too big because you've eliminated some of what we considered, or what I consider to be open space. If we could get some of that back, I'm leading up to a question, I'm not just preaching. My question is it possible, I understand you've got a comprehensive permit based upon the plan that you've given to us, but would you consider, if not giving us back all of it, would you consider giving us back some of that space? Because we want to move this forward. It's very important to the town. And again, I reiterate, we did approve the demolition process. We want that done. That's a public safety hazard. And we're very pleased that we're moving forward in that direction. Now, on the site development, we're looking to see if we can get some open space preserved, which I think the tree is simply representative of that space.
I agree with you, John. I think that's really the point. I think we could be much more flexible about the tree. We could be much less demanding about the tree if we had some of the open space. I think what the woman speaking before, April, talked about, how much that area is getting used. It's becoming a focal point. And that open space that was always there, people are almost longing for it. And I know, Mr. Conley, we've, talked about this and gone around quite a bit. But just so you know that, as John is saying, I feel the same way. We could be much, much more flexible, much more accommodating concerning replacing the tree or options for the tree if we could work something where we got a little pushback so we had some green open space, because that has the same benefits as a mature tree has. And then we could work around that and maybe some other type of plantings we could do. But it's that little bit of the plaza area that we're looking for, and I think there's great consensus in the town looking for a little more space for sitting, for, as everyone's sitting in front of the plate nowadays, all of that. So if you could just consider that we could have flexibility. I would certainly. I think, John, you're saying that you would as well. Possibly other members of the board would as well.
You indicated at the last meeting that the alternate strategy was preferable to you. It's preferable to us. It's preferable to the town. I guess what I don't get is you've presented something to us that is building out the, maxing out the build out on the site, and it's not preferable to everybody. So what I don't get is, why don't you put the ultimate strategy, the one that's preferable, the alternate, put that on the table. And then based on everything that everyone is saying, that's like an end run around everything that we're talking about, and it gets us to where everyone wants to be. That's what I don't get, is why aren't we talking about that? And we do an end run. We're in the end zone, and everyone's on board. It's better for everybody, and I don't get why we keep beating this up.
Even as a concept, could you give us a concept plan that we could come back to you and say, as a concept, we like that? I know you want to keep it hypothetical, perhaps, but can't we deal in a concept?
The short answer is that, and I think Peter answered it at the last meeting, was that that our plan, we're not going to adjust our 40B plan. As far as the concept of open space, we are putting a building on the corner, but we're also removing building all along the Elliott Street elevation, which is creating the same type of open space. It's just you're moving it on the site, but you're creating open space. The building that we're proposing, the footprint of that building is within a couple hundred feet of the footprint, the box of the building for the mixed use. And the building that whole site right now is all building, front to back, from Elliott back to the tracks and all the way out. Now, what you're focusing on is the outside corner, which I understand that. But this is the design that we.
Aren't you doing to us what maybe we were doing to you, and that is adding in the town parcel?
I'm not
trying to pressure you on the town parcel.
And that goes to the second point. I am not going to entertain a development scheme that has, with property I don't control. I can't do that. I've tried that. I did that with a purchase and sale.
But the town is willing to give you that parcel.
That's not necessarily, that's not there's discussions going on about how that would get, that would take possession of that lot, but it's not a giving. There's a building to come down there.
Yeah.
So, but the point being is that the history of this site is that there was a purchase and sale signed. I applied for a special permit. I got denied.
Yes.
And this situation is I have a 40B, I have my own site control. I have my 40B permit. I've gone through the appeals process. It's gone through all the scrutiny in the world, with peer reviews, everything else, with stormwater, traffic, everything. I have a project. And this is the last piece, and I'm going to complete this dealing with the town. And Katie, I think, summed it up pretty well. I have to do that. I'd be out of my mind to do anything different.
What if we had a joint meeting with the planning? You know you've got support here.
Well, again, you're getting out in front. A joint meeting, once this is finished, a joint meeting might be the most expedient way to get a mixed use done if we came to an agreement.
But you're asking us to approve what we consider to be a bad plan from an environmental perspective.
Well, and again, that's why I have my professionals here. Our position is that under the regulations of 40B, that we have a plan that meets all the specification and regs under the 40B bylaw, which is the State Wetlands Protection Act, as far as I know.
Well,
They can speak to
well,
that.
Let me just jump
Yeah.
in, because the last statement is actually inaccurate.
Okay.
Well, the State Wetlands Protection Act is within your jurisdiction. That's not part of the 40B. We know that, we acknowledge that. The pertinent point in terms of the scrutiny that this project went through is relevant in some specific respects, although again, the standards and the jurisdiction certainly is under the state WPA as opposed to 40B. But don't forget that we had peer review with Horsley and Witten, working with our very capable engineers, and all of the concerns related to stormwater and all of those things, and the riverfront, the impacts and the standards, they were deemed to be favorable and acceptable, including what we worked out with the town DPW in terms of the stormwater that you heard the reports on. So it's relevant in that sense that many other powers that be in this town frankly, didn't even try to change the design and the size and the footprint. That happens quite typically on 40B. And if it had been part of the 40B exchange between zoning board members based on professional advice, peer review, we might have had to deal with that. But number one, that didn't happen. So many important powers that be find it a perfectly acceptable, safe environmental plan, number one. Number two, and I said this at the last hearing, the statement by several people that there's been some kind of outpouring from citizens that want this historic open space, so-called, that is not going to be there with this building. I can tell you, I was at all of the ZBA hearings, and I do not recall one person, nor do I recall any peer review consultants, nor do I recall zoning board
What about
members.
me, Peter? I was
Yeah,
there.
yes,
Come on.
you were there, that's right. But, you know, you said it again here, other than you. There was not an outcry of this plan that we're asking you to now approve somehow corrupts or mitigates against the concerns that you're expressing. The next point I'll say is to reiterate what Steve reminded you of. When you look at the overall proposed plan, it's a little bit deceptive or misleading when you look at the plain view, as we call it, looking down at the plan itself, just the footprint. As Steve just said, you have to remember that from walking along Elliott Street, aside from the new strip of landscaping and trees, but for the whole facade, you're not going to see close to the street a big building, which is what's there now. Again, urging you to compare what's there now. What you're going to see is, I'm not even sure how visible it is, but for a certain few feet, there's the support of the platform, so-called, where the surface parking is. But basically, as you walk along, you're going to see landscaping, and you're not going to see that structure impacting your visual or aesthetic sense, because it's set back, what is it, a good 20 or 30 feet?
35 feet.
35 feet is where, you know, you would see, like walking along and you see a building, but it's not for 35 feet back, a lot further away than the huge looming structure right up against the sidewalk that I've walked many times. So in that respect, that is an aspect of open space, which I think directly, if not refutes, but I think it's a very valid point in terms of addressing your concern. You can't just look at that plan that's sitting there and say, gee, look how much of the site is eaten up by the footprint of the building. And then, I guess for the moment, the final point is, under the Riverfront Protection Act, which is a main jurisdictional thing here, the fact is, there is a clear distinction under Massachusetts law on riverfront for previously developed property, previously disturbed or previously developed. And this is very disturbed property. And that's one of the things why we think what we're proposing is so approvable, so much better. So I think that you would be well within your rights dealing with the open space, not getting into the caliper of trees, because hopefully we can work that out. not speaking for Steve, but, hopefully he can work that part out. But I think that we have a very approvable plan that will be a huge benefit. And that's not getting into the question of Steve, of a position where we need to complete the 40B. We're just being candid, as was the town select woman. But we will defend this plan. This is a very approvable plan. The fact that it's the, the leapfrog, presumably, to the next step, which seems to be what many people would prefer, that's, if anything, an added benefit. But we're not resting on that. We're resting on the legitimacy of this plan. And I don't know if there's any more technical points, Steve?
Yeah, I've got a question that it may require a technical response. And I'm not suggesting this, but I recognize that the density of the development translates into an economic reality. And I understand that to make it economically viable, you need to have a certain density. And I respect that. We're pushing for more open space. Is it possible to, withdraw the footprint and go up? Just add another floor and pull back and give us some space? And you'd have the same density. And I'm not suggesting it, because I don't know from the mechanical engineering component, I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea. And you're at 4 stories now, correct?
It varies.
Five on the main body is 5, and then it steps down to 4 and 3 on the west end, and then it steps down to 4, I think out to 3 on the east end. But the main body is the 5 stories.
Is it possible, the same question though pertains, and that is whether or not if you stacked on your 3 stories, if you went up to 4 or even 5, I don't know the particulars of the design, but I'm just looking for a mechanism where you could maintain your density and still give us some openness that we had before.
Well, the short answer, if you take the main piece of the building,
Right.
if you add another floor, you're going to a steel frame. See, the new code allows 5 floors of wood frame, and that's an economic issue for apartments. So the thing is, and the other thing is, as far as massing, I know that with our review with Mass Housing Partnership, they encouraged us away from a 6-story structure. We got it down to 5, because we had a peer review done by them as well before, actually during between the first and the second submittals for our 40B application. It was a group called the UTIL Group out of Boston. They did an architectural review of this site, and this is what they came up with, and this is what we went with. So as far as going up and trying to shrink the space, I understand your concept, but that's...
I'm just trying to be creative, and I don't know the implications of that. I think you answered my question.
Mhm.
But again, I'm looking for a mechanism to move it forward.
I mean, the entire site right now is paved. There's a lot more building on that site. What we're doing, I mean, the open space, what we're calling open space is certainly in a different area. It's not on the corner, but it's on Elliott. So essentially what we're doing is taking the open space from the corner and moving it up the street. So you're not losing the open space that we're talking about. It's the location of the open space that you're losing. Right?
Let me go back to, and you've answered my questions thoughtfully, and I appreciate it. I've got another question that I actually raised before, and I asked about approving a plan in concept. What if you came to us with a plan in concept? And again, I'm not trying to leverage this deal with the town to get the extra property, but if you came to us with a plan that had that additional space, that would satisfy at least my concern, I think some others' concern here about the open space. If we were to approve it in concept, and you were to take that to the planning board, wouldn't that put you in good stead with the planning board? I mean, I think if I'm reading you correctly, that your concern is that you might not get what you asked for at the planning board. If you had our backing, that's why I suggested a joint meeting. Because if we could support you on a plan that gives you the density that you are looking for and the economic return that is warranted, and we could support you with the planning board, wouldn't that make sense? And we'd have a global settlement that would make everybody happy.
I'll revert back to my original statement that I have to see this application through, John. And wherever that goes, just the way it has to
You
be.
know, and I'm not being critical, but that sounds like almost a rote answer. I'm just trying to be creative in thought.
Well, again, one development plan includes the town of Milton lot, the other development plan does not. And we're trying to get approved a building with the property that we control.
But can you show us the other development plan? All we need to do is see it, and we might say, that's a grand idea.
John, I need a clarification in my mind. I've been thinking partially along the lines of what you were mentioning. Are you suggesting that we could approve what's before us with the understanding that there's a good faith intention to have sufficient open space in an alternative plan?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I'm not saying that, because my concern with that is it would be an ask to approve a plan that at least I think is a bad plan because it's too big for the space. What I'm asking for is to have their other plan that we haven't seen, just show it to us, because it includes the extra piece of land that would give us, as I understand it, some of the open space that we're looking for. And if we approve that in concept, they could then go back to the planning board, either by themselves or with us, and say, that's a good plan.
Yeah, but if we actually had a meeting with ourselves, the planning board, and the selectmen, theoretically, we're all on the same page. Why couldn't we set up a meeting where everyone could say yes at the same time and be done with it? Right?
Sounds like a good idea to me.
That, you know, Steve has said that he wants to do that. He says that that's a preferable strategy. The selectmen, I believe, are on the same page, that they would prefer to resolve that, and that pretty much wraps the whole thing up with a bow on it in one meeting. I mean, we're in favor of that.
Oh, I'm in favor. Yes, that was my second alternative.
And that's exactly where I was going and asking the question.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the idea of joint hearings sounds theoretically beneficial, but it doesn't really serve our interest. In a way, we've been down that route with more than just informational meetings. The planning board disapproved a previous plan that seemed very good. We candidly, I've said this before, we candidly are not comfortable, whether with informal discussions with the planning board or with the actual application, to go there without having everything we need for the 40B project under our belt. It's as simple as that, and we think we have a right to it. Sticking with not the alternative plans, but responses to what I just stated and what Steve has stated and our explanation from our engineering professionals, I have a question for you. You stated concern about the size of the building, but I don't see a response to what I just said and what Steve started me on the topic about the fact that you don't see that facade, okay? I mean, it may be the surface parking, but you see a lot more openness, okay? I haven't heard a response from commission members on that. And I would also ask, what legal standard are you applying in terms of more open space? It seems very willy-nilly, iffy and amorphous when, and you're an attorney, we go by legal standards and regulations and guidelines. What regulations, guidelines, and standards do you believe you're asserting when you make the conclusion that it's too big?
The legal standards, I think, are both in the Riverways Protection Act and the Wetlands Protection Act, and open space is one of the interests that is part of our mandate to protect.
Well, it's actually not. It may be a consideration that environmental concerns generally look at, but it's not an area that's one of the resource areas to be
Oh, I didn't
protected.
say it was a resource area. I said it was one of the interests that we are
It's one of the
duty-bound to
factors.
protect.
It's one of the factors. I would disagree that it's an interest that you're protecting, especially, again, for a previously disturbed site.
We can agree to disagree. And I actually don't disagree with some of what you said, but I believe that it's part of our mandate to seek to preserve that which we have. And the riverfront area is particularly sensitive. And we feel that we're losing that which we have. It's certainly not a pretty site now. We want to fix it up, and we salute you for getting the building down. And we want to see something go up that is beneficial to all. I'm just hung up on, I think we've presented a good concept to move this thing forward. And I understand why, you want to have the 40B project in your hands so you can go back to the planning board and say, ha-ha, you either, and I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with this, but say, look, we can do this or we can do something else. We haven't seen that something else, but the way you've described it, actually, I did see the plan that was presented, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to the planning board? I don't know what it was.
210, so.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, at least one of the plans that I saw actually looked pretty good. And it may have just been the way it was presented pictorially, but it looked good because it had the openness that we're seeking to preserve. And I just think we can do this in a positive fashion. And I understand that you don't want to say yes to it, but I'm stumped as to why we can't join forces with the selectmen and with the planning board and just get it done. I think it can be done. And I'm just reluctant to approve. I don't think it's a good plan because of the reasons whether I'm right or wrong, those are our attempt to preserve the open space for all of the benefits that it brings to the public and the wildlife and whatnot. I think it is part of our duty and responsibility to do that. But I think we can get it done and satisfy your needs, the planning board, the selectmen, the Conservation Commission, and the citizens of Milton. I think it's a great idea. I'm just not, I've heard you say you don't want to do it, but I'm not exactly sure why it can't be done.
Again, there's a long history here, John. And
I know, but we're just joining this.
I understand that.
It's not a history with us.
I know, but I'm not going to hash out essentially a 10-year run here of what's happened and hasn't happened on and off meetings. And my position hasn't changed. I have a situation where I have a building that I'm trying to permit. I need to complete this if I'm going to entertain taking on the town's lot and taking on the responsibility of taking the town's building down. And that's where it's
we're not trying to force that. I get that.
But that's
the alternative is
going with it, but it's just it can't happen the way you want it to happen.
Can I ask you a question?
It just can't happen.
Has anybody given us a measure of what the previous open space was, and then what the redistributed open space is?
Yeah,
I think we did that last time.
We testify with that several times because that's critical to our stormwater calculations as to how green it is now versus how green it was then. And we actually have an increase in green space.
Phil,
with
you're
this plan
talking
versus what's
pervious versus impervious. I think the question was more open space versus construction space.
Well, in our world, there's no differentiation. Pervious means green space, it's not encumbered by buildings, sidewalk, or parking surface. So in the context of the discussion of open space here and in previous meetings, I think we have the same definition. So yes, we've done that. I don't have the numbers here in front of me. We like to have them so I can be exact on them. But I can certify that we are providing more pervious cover with this plan than currently exists on the property today.
Pervious. That's because the area where the tree was is got macadam on it.
Right.
That's not what we're talking. We're talking about openness, so that the breeze can blow through and the flowers can bloom and the birds can zip through. And I don't want to sound corny, but we're not using the pervious versus impervious definition. Mm-hmm. We're talking about space covered by buildings.
I mean no disrespect, but I cannot see that holding up in any other forum reviewing it, be it DEP or court or anything, and that's not a challenge or a threat. I just cannot see it. I mean, environmentally, what you want to get rid of is, impervious. And we have, more pervious open space in the traditional sense. The fact that we're talking about lack of structure, that to me is beyond the legitimate goals and regulations that conservation commissions normally deal with. And again, if you want to, but even if I would hypothetically accept that as a value that you could try to preserve, I keep going back to that long area of, what is it? It's 100 feet or more, the along Elliott Street, where you have a lot more wind blowing by for the public, for the benefit of everybody, than you do in the little, it's still private property. I mean, you're making it sound as if we've deprived the town of a public amenity. Forgive me for getting a little bit excited here, but I really feel quite passionate about this.
I just want to
I
get
find
back
it
to
irrational.
a little bit what Mr. Conley was saying. Just when you talk about the history, I think it should be obvious that what you're looking at tonight and what you've seen the last few meetings is a great willingness on the Conservation Commission's part to try to work with you to envision a slightly different plan here, and that we would be more accommodating. And I think we're saying that specifically, and I think we need to assure you that we actually feel this way. And if we could do a planning meeting in concert, then we could make great progress on this and deal with, you know, the unknown that we're all talking about, this other parcel that's still sitting there. That it's sort of absurd that we're not dealing with that, and we all know that. So we'd like to wrap this up as well. And I don't think you should be as concerned about, at least before this board, the history that you've encountered so much as what you're seeing now and what you're seeing recently.
And we'll have a special meeting. We do not seek to delay this process. If you want a special meeting, we've got it. And we'll coordinate with the selectmen, the planning board. We'll meet anytime you want. It is not an issue of delay. We need to get this done. But we'd like to get it done in an appropriate fashion, in the best way possible.
And, you know, despite my feeling strongly in disagreement as to the merits of this proposal, believe me, I accept in good faith what you're all saying, as though you're trying to work things out. I sincerely accept your effort in that regard. I do still strongly disagree with the merits, but, you know, Steve, at some point, you know, you can certainly say no, and I support you if you want to take a break and talk privately for a few minutes with us guys. I'm sure that the chairman would let us.
Sure.
Okay?
Yes, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brief recess, thank you.
We'll take a short recess, folks. Could we address the issue on the next issue on the agenda, 70 Parkwood Drive? Kathy, do you know who that is?
There he is. Parkwood Drive. You're up.
So I was not the one.
Trying to fill in the gap.
Don't be offended if we interrupt you if they come back. It's just to make efficient use of the time.
I hope I'm easier than that one. All right, my name's Brian Maloney. I live at 70 Parkwood Drive in Milton, and moved there about 2 or 3 years ago, and I have a bunch of dead trees in the our backyard, and they're look like totem poles basically, and they're leaning, some of them are leaning over towards our yard. And someone up the street chopped down some trees and didn't get permission to do so. I never experienced anything like this. So I said to my wife, maybe we should call and ask permission before we...
Thank you.
So that's why I'm here. I took some pictures of the stuff. I actually had a tree that's living, big branch come down and smash my fence and everything. And I had a couple little kids, and I'm just nervous that on a windy day, something's gonna come down and hurt someone.
Okay. Perfectly understandable. Kathy, have you seen the property?
No, but Julie has.
I have seen it, yes.
Okay.
I spoke to your wife. And,
Okay,
yes.
cool. All right. So that's my story, and
Is it jurisdictional?
It is jurisdictional.
We're going to be out Saturday anyway, should we go there?
Let's take a look at it. Yeah, let's do that.
okay.
All right.
Yeah. You know, Pine Tree Brook is at the bottom of where your land slopes down to.
Yep.
and that's wetland all around it there, you can see it, so that's part of our jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's
So
fine,
we'll look
you
at
know.
it and see.
So how long does it take to, you'll look at it? I mean, I don't mind planting some more trees.
It's a public meeting.
Okay.
And we can make a decision Saturday morning. We should be there by, certainly by 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock Saturday, you'll be at my house?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. All right, I'm done.
Perfect, you are done.
All
So
right.
thank you very much, but yeah, we really,
Yeah.
So I can take the pictures and
I
forward
made
them to you guys?
I made 3 copies this week. All right?
that's perfect. And by the way, thank your wife as well. We really appreciate people coming in and asking information. That's very nice.
All right.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Back on?
Yeah, we're back in the record. We're back to 131 Henry.
Okay. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to caucus, so to speak. So really just two things to say. We cannot put this off, and we cannot agree to the speculative possible future plan. We really do want a decision one way or the other. I do have I'd like the opportunity perhaps to reiterate through Phil what I asked a little differently. So Phil, do you want to kind of restate what I was trying to say?
Sure, sure. From my position, again, technically speaking, not legally, we've gone around and around on a number of different topics, and we haven't really honed in on, the specific aspects of the plan that the commission, most strongly disagrees with specificity. We've talked about open space tonight. We've testified that we have more open space as a result of this plan than as what's out there today. We're just reconfiguring it. Maybe that's not to the commission's liking, but the reality is those are the numbers. That's how it's proposed. So I think for my benefit for this application, I think for your ultimate deliberations, we should start putting forth the specific points relative to this plan, that are not satisfactory to the commission relative to the Protection Act.
All right. On your calculations, if you were to take the macadam out and plant grass there, how would your calculations look then?
Well, again, our calculations are, open space or pervious, whoever we want to term it,
But that's
yep.
critical to us, and
No,
that makes a difference to us. And you're using apples and we're using oranges.
No, I don't think we are. We kind of group everything together. In our world, it's either open to the sky or it's not. So it's green space. You're standing on something that is living and growing and is open to the sky. That's pervious. Or it's impervious, which is sidewalk, building, parking lot. I mean, that's it. So the way you've termed open space is the same way I termed pervious. So I think we are talking apples to apples here.
No, we're not. We're not. We're saying open space is open, that nothing is built on it. There's no structure on it. So we're including the macadam-covered open lot in the corner of Elliott and Central as open space.
I mean, think City Hall Plaza in Boston. It's open space, even though it's paved, but it's still open space that people can use, and the air circulates, so.
That's why I think it's very important for the record to reflect that we're not using the same terms and the same definition.
Maybe in the application of, City Hall, where we have brick pavers as open space, which is, we have limited brick pavers out here. We consider that, pervious cover for the purposes of our drainage calculations. Water is allowed to get through it. Obviously, the brick pavers that are out there come out as part of the project, and we go to the truest sense of the definition, green open space, as what's shown on the plan. So maybe there is wiggle room in our definitions, and we're talking slightly differently. But at the end of the day, what is being provided, I believe meets the criteria that you're trying to put forth.
And even, I think with what you're getting at, I mean, if you take the strip of land along Elliott is greater in square footage than the macadam area at the corner, right, Chris? I mean, just from just a simple
Yeah,
calculation.
plus this entire area out front is paved now, which we're turning back into green, and we have a nice sitting wall with brick pavers backed up by an upper terrace of planting. And the building comes right to the side, back of the sidewalk, the entire length of this right here, and that's gonna be all green, planted lawn, shrubs, trees.
And this is exactly behind the question that I asked relative to the measures. And I'm, in my mind, faced with a pinball machine that's running from trees to wind to grass with no common definition. It seems it's continuously moving pieces. And we have to somehow settle on a commonly understood definition of what we mean by the open space.
No building. I don't care what the surface is. If it's macadam,
Then we meet that with no problem. If that's the deciding factor, then we absolutely meet that. Area that is not occupied by building. We are definitely, we have a surplus of open space as a result of this plan versus what's out there now.
I'd like to see those numbers, because I think thus far, I've been listening to you, and I'm under the impression that we're losing a lot of what I call open space, albeit space with macadam surface. And I'm pointing to that corner where the tree was. And I don't want to get back to the tree, because that's not the issue. It's more of an open space issue. But in my view, by removing the tree, which had a huge root ball, I mean, that's monstrous, that allowed you to fill that space with a building. That's why, at least from my own perspective, that's why I'm using that term open space, because that which was open with that large tree, that monstrous root ball, you've now filled that with a building. That's the loss that I see that we're taking under the interest that we protect. And that's why I think the enforcement order is kind of, it's a sticking point for us. It's not the tree, but by removing the tree, you just filled that space with a building, where you wouldn't have been able to do that if you left the tree there.
But if I may, I mean, on that point, that's where Steve's detailed explanation is important. Yes, it's acknowledged, mea culpa, it was cut down without permission. But if they had gone for permission, you would have granted permission, because it was clearly unsafe. We've heard new testimony tonight from a neighbor familiar with it. It was the arborist. I have no doubt that if the applicant had time, or whether it was a time issue or whatever it was, but if they had come to the commission, you would have recognized, as sad as it was, that that tree had to come down. So
There was disagreement, Peter, and we had an arborist come in and say that it had another 20 years left.
Well-
Now, 20 years is not 200 years, I get it, but it wasn't a clear-cut issue, and there was some disagreement among the arborists. I think we had three. We had whoever the tree whisperer was, that's what he
And
called
again,
himself.
that was
I forget his name.
Twig, large S.
How could I forget?
The
Tree guys named Twig, it's like an ice cream man named Cone. Come on.
I can't top that.
Kids are like a Kurt Vonnegut role.
He was brought up by the planning board from Jamestown, Rhode Island. He's a tree advocate. He's not an objective opinion on that tree. The two arborists that gave opinions on that tree, one was Maltby Company, which was a bidder for the RFP that the town put out to hire an arborist. And Maltby Company's opinion was the tree had to come down.
I don't think we need to revisit this
Well, you
again.
do,
It's relevant to the question of,
Judith,
you know,
because of
taking
what
that
John-
macadam
let
area.
me finish. What you're talking about, that tree on that corner, the root ball, the spread of that thing, the tree had to come down anyway. It doesn't matter what building goes there, it doesn't matter if it's open space. The tree had to come down because of its proximity to the street. It had to be removed. That's just the way it is, I mean. And as you know, when the sidewalks were installed in that intersection 10 years ago, they cut the root system and killed the tree. And everybody knows it.
I don't.
Well, you do now, because that's what they did.
That's
Because
the
as
first time I've heard that. And how,
those things were cut because the grade is a little bit above where the sidewalk was, and most of the oak trees, those roots are about 3 feet below the surface, a lot of ledge and things there. They cut those trees, dug the thing out, put in these concrete sidewalks, and they killed the tree. And then I'm getting penalized for taking it down. Well,
it was
that's fine.
controversial, and I don't think that
It is
all of the testimony came in the same way. My memory is that somebody said it's got another 20 years. I don't know if anybody, I don't know who was on the commission at the
Well,
time.
he's the same person that said that that animals need condominiums too. You remember that comment too? You know, I mean, he had a lot to say that night. He went round and around on that thing.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's what the guy said. I was like, well, maybe in your world, but not with me. You know?
Sorry, I missed
Can I
it.
ask maybe a
Yeah.
silly question about the quality of open space? And I guess my question is, a long, narrow strip paralleling a sidewalk along Elliott Street is different from a cohesive space on the corner altogether that mimics, perhaps, and I don't want to bring up the tree because I know it's a sore issue, but can we explore the issue of the quality of square footage of open space along narrow strip versus a great area on
The
a
difference between
corner?
having a room like this together versus if we took this room and made it 4 feet wide and all the way, it would be a different
Well,
function.
that's sort of
and
a
what we could
social
do
and,
yeah.
kind of planning issue, but in terms of, in terms of a conservation issue, I think there's also a question regarding biological value. Sort of long skinny along a road and a sidewalk is different from a large cohesive area.
But you
Even
need-
though the square footage may be the same.
I understand what you're driving at. But the point is, whether it's this application or the proposed special permit from a few years ago, that corner had building on it. Now, the depth of the setback on the special permit was deeper off the intersection coming in from the corner than it is in this proposal, but this still has a green space, which isn't there right now. It's all pavement. Now, the mixed-use proposal is set back a little more, but it still had to hold the street line because of the commercial elements. So either way, what I'm saying is either way, this argument about the corner and about the tree, either way, there's gonna be building there.
But you're saying the commercial plan has a little more, it's pulled back?
A little bit more, and
space?
there'll be more pavers and things like that for walking, but it's the same premise as what's here right now. It's the same premise.
A little bit more is relative. How much more?
Off the top of my head, I mean, I don't have an exact number for you, but I do know that here, it's set back, on the corner itself, it's set back a little, the special permit was set back a little bit more. Have you ever done dimension of these? Just what hugs the corner, as far as open spaces.
That's like.
The premise is the same, it's just.
And you end up with more of a streetscape instead of just the wall of the building for the entire length.
And I would
To
offer.
me, the streets, yeah, nobody wants that.
Right.
Well, what's there now?
But I would
Nobody
offer,
wants that.
on the
But
point
in term-
about biological, that planted is far more advantageous than unplanted open space.
That's a point I was just going to make,
question
similar to
about
that. I mean, again, two
Absolutely.
things. That, it's not a big square footage, whatever it is, the macadam area in question or controversy, it's not a big area, number one. And in terms of air and that definition of open space, even for the purposes that you ascribe to it, I think it's a very salient difference, especially comparing it to something like City Hall Plaza. City Hall Plaza in Boston is a public amenity. This isn't a public amenity. It's still private property. And, in terms of benefit to the public, it's equally likely, and I think perhaps more beneficial, that there's a much more pleasant green green strip and continuity of all the way up Elliott Street that's going to contribute and promote the values that you're talking about. Openness and nature, much more than just a little half-circular area that may or may not, and under your definition, may or may not be landscape. The fact is, it's not that whole macadam area, but as Phil also just pointed out, I keep stressing the strip all the way up Elliott Street, but there's going to be nice new landscaping along that perimeter of the curved corner as well, which the public is going to benefit from. The public isn't going to benefit from some theoretical half-circular open space that they can't walk on and do anything on. So that's why, again, I really do respectfully disagree.
Okay. All right, well, obviously, your intent on a vote, I will invite question from abutters or comments and members of the public. And then you are asking for a vote tonight. That's correct?
Yes.
I want you to know something, that if the vote comes out that the permit is denied, we still remain, at which I assume that you'd appeal, but during that process, we still remain ready, willing, and able to participate in a joint effort to move this alternative, which we think would be a better proposition. We still are ready, willing, and able to support a better plan, that, in my view, certainly, with the planning board, the selectmen, or any other public forum. So we're not, I just want you to know that if there's a delay in the process, we're not going to sit back and just, twiddle our thumbs, because I think there's a better way. But having said that, are there abutters, first of all, that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Are there members of the public that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Yes, Katie?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Katie Conlon, member of the Board of Selectmen. In listening to the discussion, I think it would be important that I just mention a couple of things that I'd ask you to keep in mind, bigger picture items as you're making your decision. The town has $320,000 approximately set aside in the reserve fund. Town meeting last night just moved it from the current year's reserve fund to next year's reserve fund to pay for the demolition of our property. It's possible that if we have a denial and there's an appeal and we have a deadline right now of July 31st under the current demolition agreement, it's possible that the town will wind up having to pay for the demolition of its property if we're not able to reach a deal for a different alternative whereby we would transfer the town-owned property to the Conleys for a mixed-use development that would include the Carrick Realty Trust picking up the cost of the demolition. So the demolition cost is an important issue, and that's a big picture item for the town. I think as a selectman, it's incumbent upon me to bring that to your attention as a factor for you to consider. And as a selectman, I'm asking that we consider, I understand that there's statutory jurisdiction that this board is responsible for, and I have great respect for the members here and the time you put in and the commitment you make to the environmental issues and the conservation issues. I think we as a town government, all of us, whether it's the selectmen, the planning board, the town administration, the conservation commission, there's so many different boards, Board of Appeals, so many different boards and committees and town officials involved in this whole process for a number of years. We have to keep our eye on the long-term strategic interest, the best interest of the town in the long term. I think the best interest in the town in the long term is for the mixed-use development. But that's not before the board at this time. What's before you currently, obviously, relates to the affordable housing 40B development. And in sitting in the audience and listening to the discussion, while I understand the issues of the open space and the benefits that the other proposal would bring, it does seem that what's before you tonight is really what needs to be voted upon rather than any discussion of joint meetings. That may be a great idea, and maybe that if we ever get to that stage, maybe that's something that we should be entertaining. But it seems that obviously you have to vote on the application that's before you. That's what the applicant is asking for. And as one member of the board, I support them in seeking to finish up their 40B approvals and try to get to the next stage, because I think over the past so many months working with Mr. Connolly, I think he and I have developed a relationship of trust. I've had very good negotiations with Mr. Connolly, and I think that at the end of the day, we can reach a good outcome at this site. But that's not currently before us, and it may not be before us, and depending on, on what the current applicant before you is willing to enter into with the town. So whether or not they're willing to go forward with any negotiations, they have before you a different application tonight. I don't pretend to know all of the law in this and whether the different versions of open space, where that ultimately may come out. But I think it's important to keep in mind the demolition cost of the town may be facing. We could have much better uses for $320,000 than demolishing the town-owned property and then figuring out some alternative plan with it if this project does go forward. And I think there's been references to a lot of history here, and that's true. This has been going on for probably 10 or 12 years. There's probably a lot of mistakes that have been made all around. But looking forward and onward and upward from where we are is, I think, is the best way to approach this. And we are where we are. Rather than looking back, we're trying to look forward. We're trying to reach the best outcome for the town at this site. And so I just wanted to bring those items to your attention and to personally, as one member of the board, support the application that's currently before you, with the hope that we would then, if it's approved, we would then move on to another negotiation, finish that up, and hopefully then go to the planning board and reach what I think would be a better proposal, but.
Can I
yes.
ask a question? And actually, I should make a statement first. It doesn't matter to us whether this is a 40B project or mixed use. I mean, 40B projects, we are in desperate need of affordable units in our town, and that's a high priority for the state and for the citizens. So from a zoning perspective or a project perspective, it doesn't matter. We're just looking at the environmental component of it. That's the statement. The question is this. How do you propose, actually to the applicant, how do you propose that we take a vote on this when we have an outstanding enforcement order? Now, I'll give you some history, and I think I was probably wrong for about a decade, but I used to believe that there was a bylaw in Milton that said that any board could not issue a permit if the applicant was in violation of another permit. And then I went searching for it, I could never find the bylaw. But that's certainly been, over 23 years, that's been the history and the uniform practice of the Conservation Commission. And that is that we never issued another permit unless we had resolved the first permit. So I'm not sure how to proceed in the absence of resolving the enforcement order. And we seem to be a little bit at odds in terms of how to correct it. And Steve, that's why I asked you, are you aware of the cost of putting in larger caliber trees? Because I don't think we can resolve one without resolving both. And I'm not trying to leverage that part of it against you, but I don't think that we can proceed to have one vote without two votes. And I'm not sure what your expectation is, and we haven't even entertained a motion as to what to do with the enforcement order. But certainly, we would require some mitigation. As you know, before we even get to this point, we need to resolve the enforcement order. To do so, it might hit you with a cost that you're not expecting. We don't even know what the cost is. But let's say we said, okay, you're going to put in 3 trees, and you're going to put in 3, I don't know, I'll make it up, 12-inch caliber trees, 2 at the library and 1 at Glover School. If we can't get you to shrink the building and put one in there, we don't know what the cost of that is, and I don't think you do either. And I don't want to put an uncertainty into the project. And I'd like your response or your input. I don't have a direct question, but I'm not sure how you would react if we took a vote right now to say, okay, we want 3 14-inch caliber trees or 12-inch caliber trees. And you're going to say, okay, what is that going to cost me? You don't know, and we don't know. And I don't know what that would do to the whole economic analysis. And I'm not trying to use that as leverage, but I think we have to resolve it. And maybe somebody will make a motion to plant 3 4-inch caliber or 5-inch caliber trees.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Back to what I mentioned earlier, in terms of mitigating with numbers, maybe we have 6 6-inch caliber trees.
I don't know. I don't think 6-inch caliber trees would satisfy everybody on the board.
All right, so how about 1 12 and 5 6s? Right,
What's
so
the cost?
We have to,
We have to be creative.
That's exactly right.
I agree with you.
And reasonable and respectful of the environment so that we accomplish something. I don't want to plant 5 12-inch dead trees. Or 6 12 trees that are going to, 5 are going to die and 1's going to survive. That's going to go totally against anything that we would want. So what can we come up with that is feasible? Say, I'll make a motion for one 12-inch tree and 5 6-inch trees as mitigation.
What if that passed? They're gonna say, what is that gonna cost me?
Everybody has to take a risk.
Mr. Chairman, I can say
They don't have any
that
choice.
the 4 to 5 inch caliper is gonna run about $2,500 installed, roughly.
Yeah.
It's about $1,000, but it's not, usually you double it, but for a tree that size, probably gotta add a little more because of the equipment that's needed, the men.
I'm sorry, say that again, 4 to 5 inch caliper tree
They're
is
gonna run about $2,500 a tree
installed.
installed. Is that what I gave you? Right.
Well, first of all, does anybody disagree that we have to resolve both of these issues?
We can just tell them, if they want to get rid of the enforcement order, we just tell them what they have to do. They can't appeal it. You can't appeal an enforcement order. I keep telling you that. And so, well, what if they don't like it?
John,
I don't care if they don't like it.
I was just being diplomatic. Come on.
Come on.
I would offer that it's in the interest of all the parties for us to clear the decks.
Okay. Comments on, the proposal is for 5?
6-inch and 12-inch.
Well, what is one of those big scoops that we were describing before, to pick up a tree that's more like 12 inches? I think you're talking 20,000, probably $30,000 a tree.
I've seen it on this old house.
Yeah, and I think it's about 20 or 30,000. Does that
They do
sound
it all the
about
time.
right to you?
They've seen it too.
You know, one of those enormous
Yeah, the
scoops
spades.
where you can take, I think I had heard that it's about $20,000 or $30,000 for a tree of
For a
that
12
size.
inch, for a 12 inch
For
tree?
12 inch.
I-
You know, to actually come, so then you have a huge canopy. So if we did 4 of those instead, but then you're talking about $80,000, maybe $100,000 it would be costing. We could ask for that instead.
I would just say that
You did.
it's going to be more difficult to find locations for those
No, it's not.
than it is for
No,
a small, from my
I mean,
point
we
of view.
certainly can find it, but
Corner,
where?
corner of Herrick Drive and School Street.
6 times 2,500.
Call what?
Plus
Corner of Herrick Drive and School Street.
Yeah, 25K.
And I'm still going to argue on survivability even on a 12-inch.
Well, an
I want
alternate
6 trees to survive.
Well, an alternate
That's
strategy
installed.
would be to say
25K.
3 trees in one location over a period of time until you have a survivable tree.
5, 6. So
You could
25K.
say, we'll plant 1 tree at 12 inches at a given location.
Until there's a survival, until all the trees are
Well,
survivable.
no.
I could
you
go
say-
on for infinity.
No, you pick a number, you say what your number is, but the goal is to have a survivable tree. So you could say, this is the location we're gonna plant it, assume that there's gonna be a maximum number of 3.
Okay, there's a motion
And-
on the table, it's not been seconded, so maybe if you disagree with that one, somebody should suggest another motion.
I'm just throwing out another idea for, you're talking about quantities and.
No, I'm actually favoring Arthur's,
Okay.
5 and 1. But there's no magic to it, and I don't want to be arbitrary. I think there has to be some rational basis for it. And I think the rational basis is that we had an extraordinary tree that we lost. And I say that, Steve, and I recognize, you know, what you said. Gene, did you have a?
Yes, Mr. Kerney, excuse me for interrupting.
That's fine.
As a taxpayer, and, you know, like everyone else in this room here, I see it kind of as a moot argument on these trees, quite honestly. The way I look at it, I sat at this table 5 years ago with the planning board, and I begged them to do one or the other. Pick something. Had we done the 38 condos and the mixed use, we're talking between $350,000, $400,000 a year that all the taxpayers have missed out on, plus the improved property values down in that neighborhood. Now, if Mr. Conley agrees to do these trees, and then he has to sit down with the selectmen and the planning board and you folks again to do a new deal back to the 38 condominiums. I'm sure part of that negotiation is going to be, well, I got $100,000 in new trees, so I can't take $100,000 off of this. Again, it's the taxpayers who are going to pay here, and thank you for your time. That's the way I see it.
You lost me at the very end.
Okay.
I understand
The
that
town is going to go into negotiations with the Conleys,
Right.
Carrick Realty. They already offered $400,000 for this property several years ago, which the town somehow ended up not accepting after having taken a $40,000 deposit that was deposited in their escrow account. But the bottom line is, whatever costs you add on now, I'm sure it's going to be figured into the next negotiation where the selectmen and others are trying to get the 38 condos and mixed use back on the table. That's all I'm saying is, money's finite. And I say, the developers are in this to make $1. And if you raise their costs,
you make a good point.
we have to make it up. The taxpayers are making it up. That's all I'm saying.
Right,
And,
but I actually never thought of that.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thoughts?
It all seems to come back to me as to why we're not talking about the real issue, the big elephant in the room. Why aren't we talking about the plan that everybody wants to have? I know we have to go, I know because,
We vote on this enforcement order tonight,
Yes.
right.
and then the plans get changed next. So next, he's come back, Steve's coming back with the multi-use plan instead.
We don't want to use that as leverage.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm asking a question. Can we revisit this enforcement order at that point, or does this stand firm? We can't revisit it? Are you sure?
I suppose you could revisit anything, but that sounds like we're just trying to leverage them. I don't like the sound of that.
Well,
I think we ought to
We
vote.
do need to
on
move
the-
it
on the-
forward. I don't think anyone wants to hold this up. I think we need to find a way forward.
I certainly don't want to hold it up, no.
Mr. Connolly could win the lottery tonight and then decided he doesn't want to build a building. Somebody else will. Right?
Okay, so I think we have to move forward. There's a motion on the table. You've got 5 6-inch trees, 1 12-inch tree, with location to be decided later.
Species to be decided? I'm of the opinion that it needs to be a potential
Survivability.
legacy
Oh.
kind of tree. The trees we're talking about are not red oaks. Maybe it's a beech. Maybe
Well,
it's something that's,
let's-
and
let's-
I'm deferring to someone, to you, just in terms of,
Extremely slow growing, extremely. Beaches are beautiful.
well, I'm
but-
just throwing out
yeah.
beeches
Yeah,
an idea.
no,
because
I
once
agree
came
with you,
down,
and they're
but
legacy trees and they're beautiful. but-
chestnuts.
But they're not native, and we want to stick with native.
Native.
So we could do hackberries that have done quite
Why don't
well.
we just be generic and say native legacy trees? And then
To be
flexibility, a
approved.
variety of legacy.
Well, let's be
Variety.
specific.
Term we
Let's
have
say,
to
we could
define
say
what
2
the
red
exact
oaks and 3 hackberry, which are doing great and are fast growing, and they're not easy to find, but they've done really well by the Neponset. I would go along with that. Now, what size caliber are we talking about?
Well, that's
It was,
what Arthur
it was
was just talking about.
112 and what, 5 or 6?
Six.
6.
So 2 red oak and 3 hackberry are the 5 6 inches, and then the 12 inches what?
I mean, that can be a showcase tree, and we need to talk about survivability, of course. I mean, that can be a showcase tree.
Well, we should think about black cherries. That's what people are, they have more life in them in terms of caterpillars that I was talking about before. So let's say
And longevity? I mean, we
Longevity,
should consider
tall.
longevity. What's the longevity?
black cherry,
What is the longevity?
More longevity.
150 years.
This is what he was 40 trees.
Folks are older, but that's enough.
And that'll grow to how large of a tree?
Same as an oak, 200 feet.
Or he had a town forest someplace.
Okay, is that
It's
okay?
acceptable to me, I like that.
wait a minute. Just so I get it, you have 2 red oaks,
3 hackberry
3
and
hackberry.
a black cherry,
The large caliper blackberry.
large caliber. We could do that.
That's your motion, Arthur?
And the rest is 6
Acceptable.
inches, right?
Yes.
Correct.
112 and, was
that's
it
a black
5 or
cherry.
6?
5.
Arthur, 5, 6-inch caliber.
And location to be decided by whom?
By us. but-
Depends.
Well, we need the input from DPW or Parks and Recreation or
School
somebody.
department.
Town of
School
Milton.
Department.
Do you want to
Selectmen,
say,
even.
with the conservation approval of the location, but get
Yes,
suggestions?
okay.
That's fine.
Location to be approved by
That's
the
fine.
Conservation Commission?
Fine.
That's your motion?
Yeah, yes.
Seconded? Seconded, all right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay, done. Okay, now we're on to the main motion, which is, notice of intent. Is there a motion to approve? Now, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we do have a lot of conditions. And we should probably list those conditions. One of them, of course, is an LSP.
Right.
On board, but I think we addressed that last
right.
last night. We've got drainage, the drainage calculations sufficient for everybody's approval. All right. We've got our
I saw the information, I took.
we've got our regular boilerplate conditions.
And the mitigation of the retention basins, they're all gonna remain the same anyway as far as the terms and conditions for the construction after the demolition. So a lot of that is in place anyway.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
That's correct. So we would, and have you seen the order
Yes,
conditions for
right.
the?
Yes.
Okay, so we can actually fold those, the same.
Fold it into
terms
this.
and conditions.
Yeah.
Into the project.
Right.
All right, now, one of the things you have to be aware of and your contractor has to be aware of is that for the construction staging area, this is a riverfront area, which is 200 feet in jurisdiction. We've always, as part of our boilerplate, you can't store equipment within 100 feet of the resource area. I don't think that's going to be a problem for you and your site, because I think you're more than 100 feet away, or at least you can find space.
Yeah, 100 feet's there.
Okay, but that's definitely one of our
Conditions.
conditions. There's no refueling, there's no storage, there's no overnight storage. There'll be a spill protection plan in case of a hydraulic.
Something
hose
lets
box.
go or whatever, right.
So we've got our regular boilerplate, the conditions that we put in the demo order conditions, the licensed site professional, and we actually need I think the LSP will say this, but we definitely need a site assessment in terms of what's there in surrounding the tanks and underneath the foundation. And of course, it would be DEP required mitigation of any contamination that would be found.
Is the LSP going to be from day one or after the work?
After the work.
Right.
No,
It
it says it is,
We're on the site development
Right.
from day one.
There was some talk that, well, we're going to do the work, then we'll have the LSP come in and make sure everything we did complied.
Oh, no. I think that discussion was over the demolition.
When we get the buildings down, before we start any groundwork, we're gonna hire an LSP.
Yes. Right, that's the way I understand.
That's the way everybody.
Right, yeah.
And that's what's written into our decision, actually. We actually agreed to that for our 40B, a Board of Appeal decision.
Okay,
It's written in that way.
all right.
I've never seen the decision, so I don't know.
It's on file at the town clerk's office.
We don't get it.
Or you can, it's open from, I think, 9 to 5.
I think I handed in a copy.
Where is it? I'm sorry, we have to stall again, I apologize. And thank you, members of the public, for your patience. I know we've been delayed and slow tonight.
Nebulizer, inhaler.
This is a lot better than what
In the midst of all this, in the midst of all this, my granddaughter's torn, my backyard was torn nurseries.
Find out
What happened? Winter.
Yes, because they're gonna need.
Negotiating to get my oil tank removed. Oh, God, wow. Saturday was 12-inch tree. I started at 5.
Take one out of my yard, I got a nice beach.
No one's came back. Dorchester, with the dog, I dropped the dog off. Came back. Came back, I was in Boston, road race to get one of the cakes.
Few and far between to find, right? And once you don't want to let go.
Is that what they said?
Yeah. We all set? Back in session, folks. So we have the, you know, the background terms and conditions of the motion on your notice of intent. Is there a motion among the commissioners to approve the notice of intent and issue an order of conditions with those expert and special conditions?
There's an awful lot of unanswered questions, okay, that we have discussed and kind of pushed to the side. Okay, so
What would
the
those
time
be?
is late now, and I am not in favor of something when I don't know all the answers to it.
Well, I think then you have to list the questions that we're missing information on, so that they know.
I could go on for pages.
Well, just start.
Not-
Go one, what's your first question? No, I mean that.
Go ahead, go ahead, continue.
Craig, no, if there are
You need
unanswered
to-
questions, if you have unanswered questions, then the public may as well. We've done the stormwater discharge, right? We're gonna fold in our,
Never seen anything from Joe Lynch saying he approved of all this.
Absolutely.
he actually
We
deferred
submitted
it
it.
to us.
Right.
Right.
What do I know about stormwater going into the Pine Tree Brook? What basis do I have to tell, okay, to make a decision whether the oil separator, the primary oil separator, is enough to protect the Neponset River? Okay?
Well,
They just have a typical oil trap, oil separator, one oil separator, as the water goes into the Pine Tree Brook in there. And Joe Lynn says, oh, well, it's up to the Conservation Commission.
well, the
it's
oil
not like-
separator has to be sufficient to get the oil out of it. So whether or not it's a 10-inch separator or a.
Do you know how long oil separators in this town last in catch basins?
No.
First time they clean them out, they pop the cast iron, drop in the clamshell, bang, off goes the oil separator. It's a little cast iron device that sits there.
Oh, okay, but that's an ongoing, that's part of an O&M plan, and I believe that's part of the.
I haven't seen any of that.
There was an operation and maintenance plan submitted with the application. I just want to just jump in, because I know one of the requirements that came up that the commission has is on oil and water separators. And when we were in front of the ZBA is, Peter was reminding me that, we deferred to the commission on, the oil and gas separators to make sure we met your standards for it. And then in our conversations with Joe Lynch and John Thompson, we said we want you to agree with this in concept. So that way the commission can agree with the discharge points, and then we go back to the DPW for the stormwater permit, which will define all of the parameters. And again, it's, we're working through all the departments in town the best way we can in terms of organizing those.
Well, then, I appreciate you saying it that way, but that actually gives some credence to what Craig has said. And I mean, my understanding was the O&M plan would require a continuous maintenance of those oil
Right.
separators. I thought it said that, but.
Sure. Yeah. The operation and maintenance plan for any of the proprietary stormwater devices that we have to be maintained annually, and that's what was provided to the commission. That's part of the initial notice of intent submission. Yes, sir.
And that was my understanding as well.
Yes, sir.
Is that,
The siltation barriers, it was up to the Conservation Commission to tell the contractor when the siltation barriers had washed away. Okay? That's what's in there.
No, I don't,
I'm sorry. So what we typically provide as our standard conditions for an erosion and sediment control plan is that the measures have to be in place. Obviously, the measures have to be approved by the Conservation Commission. And then our standard condition is that they get inspected by, the site engineers and/or the conservation personnel, whomever you feel is appropriate. And those measures may be added to, replaced as necessary, as directed by a representative of the commission or by the engineers to make sure that they remain functioning.
That's already in the order that I got for the demo. That within 48 hours, if there's a breakdown of the erosion control, that it'll be fixed.
right,
That's
I
already in
understand
there.
that.
Yeah, so why are we,
right.
Well, they are valid points, though, that we just want to make sure that those are, and I did say that they would
gonna
be
get
rolled
folded in,
into
right.
the order of conditions, if one issues.
Now, does the environmental noise, the decibel limit that we talked about during the site, during the demolition, does that carry over for the site work? Didn't we?
That is in the conditions on the demolition.
It is in the conditions, right?
Demolition,
Yes,
does that
correct.
carry over during the site work?
We're
we
carrying them
just-
all
we-
over.
Everything.
John just said
get
everything
rolled
gets
over.
carried over.
They all do,
This is all from a previous meeting, correct?
yes,
Yes.
correct. And do you have a copy of it?
It's in the folder.
Right here.
Oh, do you want it? Or-
No, give it to Craig or Ingrid.
Noise is the very last one, it's
Well, this is
52.
for the rest one. These are the special, the rest is the boilerplate. I remember.
We've got a great,
You were here, right?
we've got a great deal of rock to be removed. Right?
They're valid questions, Craig, that I think some of them are answered, so keep asking. And I want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
I'm gonna die.
of information.
Okay. Go ahead, continue.
It's you.
No, it's you. It's back to you. We've gone, the oil separators are discharging the Pine Tree Pit.
Trying to catch my breath. Okay. I'm done.
Okay. Is there any other information that we think we're lacking? Okay? I mean, obviously, we've got issues with the size of the building, and I don't know how people are going to vote, but that's, we've had a full discussion and frank discussion, and I think we're probably ready to vote. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a
With the
second?
conditions as cited and reported to Jeffy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? 4-2, it's denied. But I reiterate that, I know there'll be an appeal process. But, we stand ready to have a special meeting. We don't want to delay this. We think that there's a resolution that's out there.
Thank you. Let's continue commenting. Testing for the demo.
Let's say it.
A few years ago, and 2 days later, whoa, sorry, keep going.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Sure. Vote on the resolution of the enforcement order.
We did.
Oh, that was, we did,
Yeah, but
okay.
I think we need to revisit that because I think I misspoke on the size of those trees. And I want Kathy to read back what she said. I think we need to go, what was the size of the trees? Because I just looked up.
Kathy wrote
We still use that?
1, 12, and 5, 6.
Sixes.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know whether we can get a black cherry that we specified at that size. I don't think we can.
Well, I don't think we agreed that it was black cherry. I think we agreed.
One of those trees would be, so we can get
We-
we could get a red oak to get it that
Yeah,
size.
I mean, the thing is, a legacy tree, I mean, it can be done and it can be guaranteed. I mean, the vendor will guarantee, the people that do that will guarantee. And we should stipulate survivability, of
But
course.
Did we take a vote to rescind the enforcement order?
No, they have to comply.
Huh?
They have to comply.
Right, okay.
Then the enforcement order is relieved. Okay, next on the agenda is notice of intent, 395 Hillside Street.
Maybe I did, I understood you perfectly then. I was afraid for a minute there that I hadn't.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeff Kane with LAL Engineering Group. I'm representing the owner, the Rubens, for their application, notice of intent application for 395 Hillside Street, septic system replacement. It's been a while since we've seen each other, obviously, on the site walk, and I think we did have one informal meeting just to kind of initially discuss this project. But since this is our first public hearing, we'll give a quick synopsis on the background. Obviously, the owners, as you are well aware, are looking to change this 3-bedroom home with the addition of a bedroom and bathroom in the carriage house into a 4-bedroom home to accommodate family and friends visiting and things of that nature. To have that happen, we have to update the existing 3-bedroom septic system on site that was installed in around 1999 in a conventional Title V manner with pipes and stone. We have to replace this with a system that will accommodate the new 4-bedroom design of the carriage house addition. And in order to do this, we needed to use an approved alternative technology, in particular something called the Presby Enviro Septic System, Advanced Enviro Septic System. We currently do not have the setbacks on the site to put in a conventional Title V system. So we had to come up with a different idea to do this. First off, we had to go to the Board of Health to get some waivers to allow this to happen. We successfully did that by presenting this Title V, this Presby system as an improvement over the existing piping stone system that exists out there today. So with that in hand,
So the Board of Health gave you
the Board of Health gave us the waivers to allow this to go forward. So with that, we've gone ahead and come in front of you to show the environmental impacts, or at least the buffer zone impacts as a result of putting this new system in. If I could, I'll show it here on the plan. Well, first off, the Enviro septic system, we had mentioned to you folks before, last time we were in front of you, is a different type of technology that provides effluent treatment within the pipe itself, as opposed to a stone and pipe system that relies on the stone and soil beneath the system and the microbes in those soils to treat the effluent. Now, the Presby system has a plastic corrugation around it with almost like a mesh that allows this treatment to happen within the pipe. And
What's that called again? Can you spell it?
The Advanced Enviro Septic, I can show you the...
Presby?
Yeah, that's what, that's the word I didn't get. What is it?
PRESBY. That's the manufacturer's name.
Okay, and that's sort of a term of art. Okay.
Okay. So again, what they do is, if I can show you a quick little sketch here too. A standard pipe and stone system has a perforated pipe surrounded by stone. And the effluent comes out and percolates through this stone, and it forms something called a biomat, where most of your treatment happens here. And what happens is water percolates through the biomat, gets treated here, and there's additional treatment within this area beneath the zone here. This is typically why you have a 4-foot separation to your groundwater, because the treatment happens below that pipe. The soils beneath this pipe are responsible for the treatment of the effluent. Now, in the Presby system, you have a pipe with a mesh around it. And when the effluent comes into this pipe, this biomat that typically forms in the soil now forms around the circumference of this pipe within that mesh.
So what is it? It's like a...
It's really a plastic. It's a plastic mesh, is what that is.
And the pore size is?
The what?
The pore size of the mesh, so it keeps the bacteria
Well,
in.
it's surrounded by a filter fabric. There's where, that's what holds it in. It allows it to hold in and form this biomat on this fabric mesh that's on the inside of that.
Okay, so the mesh keeps the bacteria, is sized such that the bacteria are retained?
It's a medium for it to grow on.
No, it's designed as a matrix that allows the biofilm to form inside the pipe.
Right, it allows
So it's
the-
not, the mesh isn't designed to prevent the bacteria from flowing out of the pipe.
Okay,
It's
okay,
just
that's
providing a
right.
substrate for
This-
the
the tree-
biomat to form, rather than forming below the
This
system in the
biomat that would be
soils.
below the
Understood.
pipe is now around the circumference of the pipe. So all the treatment happens inside this pipe now. The area below, the sand and soil below, is just for dispersal at this point. There's no longer any.
So it's not that they
treatment.
can't get out, they prefer to stay in because that's their matrix?
That's where, right, that's where
Got
it's
it.
formed and that's where it is.
Okay.
So it's such that, in a typical Title V system, as you know, it's a 4-foot separation to groundwater. In a system like this, you can actually take credit to get only 2 feet to groundwater, since all the treatment happens within that pipe. Now, we've also submitted to you folks as well a study that was done comparing the leachate of the EnviroSeptic and the standard Title V system. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review it. But what it does show is that the COD, the BOD, the ammonia, the phosphates, the bacteria, the solids, and some of the total nitrogen is actually reduced as compared to a Title V system. So it is a more efficient type treatment system. So, all that said, what we're looking to do is we have an existing Title V system out here, and this new system will fit within that same footprint because it is a more efficient treatment system. So we're looking to have a temporary alteration of this area outside the 25-foot buffer zone, but obviously within the 100-foot buffer zone. I'm not sure if you can see it here, and I can actually draw some colored markers. What you had asked to see before was the limit of the driveway, which is right here. So you can see the footprint of this is within the limit of this driveway. So we're looking to do a temporary alteration to excavate this old system out, place the new system in place, and put the existing driveway back within the same footprint as was previous. Temporary alteration ends up with a better system for better treatment of the effluent.
How long will it take for the bacteria to grow onto the system?
It depends on the use of the system, like in any septic system. It could be, I think they said at one point it was 30 days, but again, it depends on the use of the system.
Is it ineffective prior to the formation?
It's obviously less effective, absolutely, right.
Do you pre-seed it though with?
No, you don't precede any
Okay.
septic system. And I should say, in this
Traditional one
case
you don't,
here,
but this is a different model.
yeah, and in this case here, it'll be a little quicker because we're not changing out the septic tank. So your colony of bacteria that's in here is going to transfer over to here a lot quicker than you would new construction with a brand-new septic tank. But it's going to take a while to colonize this tank, so.
The detail on the next page shows that the new septic system is actually an elevated system relative to the existing grade.
Right.
That wasn't something that we had talked about before.
It's a typical cross-section, that's all that's showing.
Okay, but my understanding was that you were putting the new septic system in the same footprint within the footprint of the existing septic system.
Yes.
But that I wasn't under the impression that it was being elevated.
It's not a mounted system, again, this is just a typical section.
Okay, that's a
thrown
typical
into-
detail. So what we're
Right.
talking about is not that detail.
No.
It's a flush level
It is
condition
flush.
based
I
on
think
what
it ends up being, once we do the first design we showed you before we finally got into the final design, what we want to do is, right now the driveway is over the top of this system, okay? This system is not designed to have a driveway on top of it. They call that H20 loading, which is a highway or roadway loading. That's not designed for that now, but that's being used as that.
Is that why it failed?
It hasn't failed.
It's not Hasn't failed.
Right, it hasn't failed.
Just larger capacity.
Right, we just
Yeah.
need to upgrade the capacity to a separate bedroom.
Right.
So,
But-
it has the potential though, absolutely. Once you start running traffic over this, we don't know the condition of these pipes, but so it has that potential. But once we get the H20 loading over the top of this Presby system, I think we end up with about 8-inch difference initially that we'll just grade down to meet the existing right there. So it's not a significant difference, but there is a slight grade difference.
What
It's
about
not a mounted system by any means.
What about a fire truck or a trash truck or a oil delivery truck going over there?
That's part of the H20 loading. And obviously, there have been delivery trucks out here before, and again, I'm not sure what the system is out there, but we've designed it for the H20 loading, which would take into account those type of vehicles.
I went on the Presby site and reviewed all of that, and it's exactly how it's intended.
Yeah.
So you did dig a test well. Did you, right?
We used the existing test pits that were done previously.
Okay,
And
so
again,
you- oh,
there's
sorry,
nothing
one
changing with the,
Is this the second side of this?
It is the second, yeah.
Okay, sorry, one second.
You used the existing, you went to the original and re-excavated? You just
no,
used
we
the
used the
data?
existing data for the test pits.
So you know the soil that's below, you know that
Yeah,
the
the
soil.
parent
that's-
material is not gonna change in this
You're not
time
removing
frame.
it. You're just setting a new one
Right.
over the top.
What has happened previously is that, you had a parent material here, subsoil, they dug that out, and down here you have what you call, this is your parent material, the material that you're perking into, material that's underlying the entire system. We're going in, taking out that same area, scarifying, and putting back this new system up in here. That parent material is not changing.
Okay, and it was viable at that time, and the assumption is it's continuing
It's
to
actually
be
very good.
viable.
It's got an 8 minute per minute, 8 minute per inch perk, which is ideal.
Okay, and we talked about the perimeter non-permeable skirt that was going to be added. On the drawing, it shows a monitoring well being installed near the street on the side.
Right here.
I had two questions on this. One is, shouldn't the monitoring well be installed at the lowest grade?
Mm-hmm.
Because anything is going to naturally migrate that way. And the second question is, should the monitoring well actually be installed outside of the impermeable barrier rather than inside the impermeable barrier?
To answer your first question, per this system design,
Yep.
boilerplate design, it will get a monitoring well within
Oh, it
the low
does.
part of the system,
Okay.
within the pipe system.
Naturally.
The monitoring well that you folks had wanted was above and beyond. And let's back up a little bit. The impervious barrier, we talked about it before, it's not required in this system by any means. There's no reason to have it. I think everyone felt a little more comfortable that if for some reason something did happen, there was some type of impervious skirt around this system that would prevent unforeseen issues going in toward that stream.
Correct.
Okay, so that's good. Belt and suspenders as far as that goes.
Yep.
Monitoring well was requested, so obviously we put it in. We have one again going in the lower end already. Inside, outside of this area, I actually kind of argue, I thought about that back and forth. It doesn't matter. If you want it on the outside, it's okay. On the inside, if there was an issue, you're going to catch it to see something happening.
But on the inside, you would expect something.
No, not at all. You'll never see something on the inside of that.
Why not? Isn't the inside inherently within the bio? I mean, you're not in the biomat, but you're in the zone of.
If we look at this section
Yeah.
here, we have impervious barrier here.
Yep.
Impervious barrier here.
Yep.
The only time you would see something in a monitoring well here is if you had some type of catastrophic failure. That's why I said it's not required for this system because the drainage is going straight down. It's never going to migrate that far.
We should never see anything there.
No. So it doesn't matter
Okay.
on one side or the other. If you saw something there, you'd have an issue. If you saw something here, you'd have an issue. I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
So the well that's the monitoring well that was originally intended to be in the system at that corner, which is the lowest corner.
Right.
Would you, because it's within the footprint of the system?
Right.
Would you expect to see something in that?
No.
Or the depth of that monitoring well is deep enough that it needs to be percolate through?
It's only,
the
the only
base
thing that
layer.
would happen is moist soil with a heavy use, which you're not going to find in a monitoring well. You're not going to see standing water in that well.
Right.
It's more of an issue if there's a failure. The same thing that you folks are asking for on that second well, that's what that is. It's an observation port in case there was an issue. If you find standing water in there, you have a problem.
Okay. Just to clarify, I didn't understand when we were on site that there was a monitoring well within the system.
Yes, and it wasn't mentioned.
And if that is the case, I'm not sure that a second well is necessary. The well was requested based on the idea that nothing was there. From my perspective, if there's one that would normally be designed and it would show us a condition of a failure, that's enough. But from my perspective, we do want the impermeable barrier because we do have the stream there. and we want to know that we're going, that there's nothing migrating
Right.
horizontally.
And that's provided in, for the Board of Health, they wanted to make sure there's something between the foundation, so it just wraps around the whole
I
thing.
agree with you, Michael, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, so the monitoring well can come out, like I said, it's a monitoring just to see if there's a failure. There's never gonna be, if there's standing water in there, there's an issue. What would happen is if the plumbing backed up in the house, what's going on? Well, instead of taking a guess, whatever, you can go out and say, well, there's standing water here, we have an issue, so.
Is it a standard practice to test that well or evaluate that well on a regular basis, or?
No, not
So
at all.
what would trigger someone to go out and evaluate that
Like I
well?
said, a failure of that system somehow, and you wanna get an idea what's going on.
Yeah, but how do you know it's gonna?
Isn't there an
If it
annual
backed up-
inspection?
The plumbing backed up in the
Yeah, because,
house.
yeah.
There's a required annual inspection.
Right, but not of testing that.
But wouldn't you
Well,
look in the?
No.
Oh,
Well, we'd like to add, then, on that basis, we'd like
But
to
there's
add
nothing
review.
test. There's not gonna be standing water in there.
Unless there's a failure, in which case it'll be obvious. So to open it up and look at it, it should be no big deal.
If this pipe is to fail,
Yeah.
right, that's kind of one of the things about this
Sure.
system. If this pipe is to fail, technically you're gonna get something that's gonna clog this up. That's what's
you're gonna back the
happen.
system
It's
up.
gonna back
Right.
the system
Yeah,
up.
that
It's
is
not gonna fail into the soil. It's gonna back your system
Into the
up.
house.
I mean, you can have them open it up and look at it. Typically, you put it 4 inches underground, it's not right up to grade. You know, the failure in this system, you'll know it in the house. That's one of the benefits of this. The failure in a pipe and stone,
That's
Such a fantastic.
well, yeah. Let me rephrase that, a benefit to you folks.
Right.
But not to the homeowner. So you'll be more aware of that on the inside. If this was to fail and have some type of breakout here and it's
you
running
budget
into the
well?
stream, well, you'd never know because the system's gonna keep running.
That's our concern.
But that's not gonna happen in this case because it's gonna block up in the pipe and the system is gonna back up before you're gonna get a breakout. That's why, I mean, none of this stuff is, it's belt and suspenders. Even beyond the Title V design requirement, it's not needed for the breakout elevations. It's not gonna happen with this type of system. But if you think inspecting that well is part of the requirements, I mean, there's a standard
I'm asking your
protocol.
opinion. I'm
There's a
from
sta-
inspecting that.
Okay, DEP has a standard protocol
Yep.
for annual inspections of these type of alternative systems.
Okay.
And there's a checklist. And there's companies that do this. I would hate to throw it on extra, but of course we can. I just don't know, to me, it serves no purpose.
Given its location,
Mhm.
I would feel very comfortable if you would have that
A
added.
visual inspection of the observation well.
Okay,
That's fine.
we'll have that observation. I mean, this is pristine water.
When it runs.
The brook beside it is pristine.
If you want to add that in, that's fine. We can add in, obviously, that they will inspect that observation point of the system. Absolutely. It's by no means a deal breaker. It's tough to throw it in when they're used to doing one thing, but we'll throw it in and make sure that it's on there, absolutely.
Understand where I'm coming from?
What's that?
Understand where I'm coming from?
Sure, but, and I had picked up on that, and you've got on your GIS map that this is an intermittent stream.
that's the old,
It's
We
in our,
talked about
it's
this
in our,
last time.
we did.
You just don't submit it that way.
Right, we just said it's not, we just said it's a stream. We always refer to it as a
it
stream.
was corrected in the last NOI.
It's
The-
not corrected in our package.
Well, the environmental analysis was done in the last NOI. It's the same site. We gave you the same documents again. We will give you the letter again.
Update your documents.
And the last time, and today I actually went out and I got the US topo maps, and we had the terminology, that is presumptively perennial.
Well-
And it's on your map. It's you've got two maps
We'll
here.
give you a corrected map.
One of them shows it.
Right,
Like
because
we
those are
said
the
before,
originals.
We're not arguing that point. We're not here to argue the point of the stream.
Yeah,
'cause
we're
we
not
know
arguing
what's
that.
inside
Strike
it.
it. You
That's
just need
right.
to strike it
That's
everywhere.
right. We thought we did.
Okay.
We did.
Something slipped through.
Well, no, because we submitted those maps previously, then we submitted an updated letter removing that, saying we're not asserting that, and we referenced the NOI in this application. We assumed that that meant everything, that you would be looking at it. We will give you a follow-up letter saying same thing, so that you have it in this application as well.
Actually, if you could revise the drawing, would be better, because the loss of the letter basically loses the reference. So if we would rather
don't
have
want
it.
this in the file.
We don't want that in the file. We're going to throw that
Can
away.
you just tell me, it's a topo map, right? Which map is that?
No, it's
A
a-
GIS
It's a
map?
Milton GIS.
Was it a locust map?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I remember that. We'll have Tom Palmer give you a revised map.
But you understand what I mean? You can't,
No,
striking it out with a letter
I
doesn't really get
apologize.
rid of it. Yep.
It should have been revised, but it wasn't, and I apologize for that, because we did intend to revise it for our previous one. We did it by letter in that one, so. Okay, we'll give you a new map.
Just generally, so the idea of the second well on site was because we didn't know that there was a well, there was a monitoring well involved. From my perspective, I don't believe that there's a need for a second one, if one was originally intended, which is what we were trying to achieve. I don't know if people agree with that. Is everyone generally in agreement?
I
with-
agree.
Okay.
You're a belt and suspenders?
Yeah.
So am I. I mean, you're so close to the stream. Is there a downside to it?
Well, can I admit, the system that's out there today is the same, is actually closer to the stream. So everything we're doing there is still an improvement over what's there today.
No, I understand that.
But having the second monitoring well,
Yeah.
it's really no issue. Again, the only slight concern I'd have.
Is it $100 more?
Yeah,
Is it
that's what I'm saying. No,
$10,000
but no one's gonna argue putting that second one in. The only concern I have is throwing this into the annual inspection because these folks aren't used to doing it. But again, if that's what you feel like wants to happen, we'll inspect both of them, you know? I mean, there's nothing to see. You're gonna unscrew the top and look down and put a stick down, you're gonna see there's nothing there, so.
If he doesn't like it, he can have it. Doesn't
that's
have to
easy.
build it.
No, so I'm saying, there's no argument on this side as far as putting any of those in or inspecting in the part of the annual report. If that makes the commission more comfortable, then.
It would make me more comfortable.
So you're feeling
Yeah,
the second
I
one?
agree.
So do you think there's a benefit to having it, oh, actually, your point was that it shouldn't be dirty either way.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
being
you guys,
inbound.
you guys
is-
picked, you want it inside or outside the barrier.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, it's gonna go down to the parent material anyway. The barrier is towed in about a foot into the parent material, so I guess it's really not gonna matter one side or the other. You know, if it's wet and there's a problem either way.
Is there a garbage disposal in the house?
No, we looked for that, they don't have one.
With no
But they could
intention
put
to
one in,
install
though.
it.
It's not a good idea with a septic system anyway, but if you want it as a condition, we can put it in as a condition.
Now, again, with the garbage disposal, it's the same thing. Garbage disposal is gonna add solids to the system, you know, so that's gonna block up that pipe, and that's why you're gonna get the internal protection from that.
Well, the thing is, if you put them inside the barrier, and you say it's probably going to be clean.
Well, it's gonna be nothing. There
Right.
should be nothing
But
there.
if there was something there, we still wouldn't know whether or not it had gone past the barrier. So why wouldn't we put at least one outside
Okay.
the barrier?
Well, that's where I was going, was put one outside and put it downhill, which means it's
Yeah.
on the, closer to the barn rather than closer to the street.
I see what you're saying. I mean, I know what your concern is. You know, for my concern, there's no issue there. But if you're saying put one outside, it doesn't even have to be right up against the barrier, but whatever, put one downstream outside the barrier. So under some theoretical condition where this floods, breaks, something happens, and it goes down, you'll know something happens outside the barrier and there's an
Right.
issue. So, does that make sense? We'll put one, there's gonna be one at this corner.
Yes.
And we'll put one outside of this corner down here. Same thing.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
So one other thing I do want to add real quickly, I know you're pressed for time, is we presented this plan to you. We have to go to the Board of Health with our final plan. We've got the variances, the final plan, which is going to happen this week. And just so you know, the new plan has the system a little bit shorter. And it goes back to what you had said as far as the grades go.
Yep.
So we wanted to get the H20 loading, we've got the system a little bit shorter so we can catch the grades before we get down to here. This does nothing as far as the Conservation Commission is concerned. It's the same footprint of disturbance. It's the same distance from the wetlands. The only change we have is we're a little bit closer to the foundation, which we were allowed by the Board of Health with the variance anyway. So the pipe stayed here. It's still inside the driveway, which I can highlight again. We're still inside that driveway. And the only thing that's happened, we're getting another trench on the outside of this system, away from the stream. So we can shorten these trenches up. And that keeps our elevation here a lot more manageable
Good,
since
yeah.
we've only get stuck in that driveway. So what we're looking for from you folks is if we can get a approval that says that's contingent on Board of Health approval of the plan, because we don't have approval yet. We have approval of the waivers, and we're gonna submit this to their peer review engineer And so we're hoping to just get approval contingent on that, because obviously we need both your folks' approval.
But you'd be okay with if we give one conditional as well?
Well, that's what I'm
You
saying.
want their
No,
approval.
that's what we're saying. We'd want to say, we would say contingent on Board of Health approving the plan, because obviously you don't have the final one technically, but this is what it's going to be. If we can get a contingent, great. Sure.
I'd just like to mention that the letter says, of May 7 indicates it would have to be, the tank would have to be pumped periodically.
Pumped periodically. The septic tank?
The tank must be emptied periodically.
That's standard.
It's talking about,
That's just a description, actually, of a standard septic
Yeah,
system.
exactly.
Right.
Any system should be pumped periodically.
That's the
Not-
tank, not the,
Not a requirement of the Presby to have it pumped every year. The septic tank, in and of itself, should be pumped periodically. Not a requirement by DEP, but a good practice for a homeowner is to pump these things out on occasion. That's all that's it. It's not part of the Presby system as far as requirements to do so.
right, DEP actually recommends 3
Recommends.
years.
Right, exactly, depending on the size of your septic tank or something like that, right?
Is that what they recommend, 3 years?
Every 3 years.
Some people go further, some people do it every year.
I thought it was like 10.
No, it's definitely not 10. But again, now if the tank backed up, same thing. It's going to back up into the house and not into the field.
Well, that's good.
It's a diagnostic.
So, as we're putting in a condition, no garbage disposal, should we also put in a condition, pumping minimally every 3 years?
Is that something that you guys want to keep track of, though?
What, are you being practical?
Because the Board of Health isn't going to follow up on that. They're going to maybe look for their annual inspection for the Presby system, but I'm just wondering if it's going to be a condition that's just going to kind of go off into...
and Jeff, what is the way, I mean, would you normally have someone come and look at the septic tank and decide if it needs to be pumped, or we just have them come and
No,
pump it?
the
Just
only
have them come and
time,
pump it?
it's like a maintenance thing with the house.
Okay.
That's all it really is. It's,
All right.
once in a while you do it, unless of course it fails, and then you have to have someone come do
Sure.
it. But it's just a maintenance thing. Some people, like I said, some people will tell you they've never had their system pumped and it keeps working for whatever reason.
But not a good practice.
No, not a good practice, especially if you have a garbage disposal. But like I said, if you have a garbage disposal, you're gonna put solids out and you're gonna fail something.
That's right.
What we're gonna do in this system is something called a Zabel filter. And we don't show it right now, but the final proposal will have it. It's just a perforated plastic sleeve that slips into this T. And what that does is stops any solids from getting out into the system. And it's just a standard little, it costs about, let's say, less than $100, just slips straight down. And they clean it out as part of the septic system maintenance. And it just prevents anything like you do have a garbage grinder with a lot of solids generated that happen to get up into the effluent. It's not going to get out into the pipe because you've got this little mesh filter there. So that will be part of the system. That should be part of just about every system the Board of Health puts in, because it's simple protection against blocking up an entire drain field, either via through laundry lint or solids from a garbage grinder.
What
So-
was that called?
It's called a Zabel filter, Z-A-B-E-L. And I said they're pretty straightforward things. So they just slip straight down to the T, and when they come to pump out the septic system, they just pull them up,
Clean it.
rinse them off, and put it right back down. And a lot of times, if they do have a failure of a tank, you'll see they'll go in and they'll pump the tank out, and this thing has saved the field because it's helped that falls in. It'll back up into the house, you pump out the tank, clean out the filter, and you're good to go. So to your point, I would not want to see the pumping of the septic system tied too much to the order conditions. But again, if that's what you feel is necessary, of course, we're not going to fight it.
It's such a fragile area.
It sure is.
I would be uncomfortable without it.
Sure.
And have the report come back to the conservation agent. So it's a.
It has to go back to the Board of Health.
So, and you
anyhow,
said
doesn't it?
within, what, 3-year period, is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
minimally every 3
Within
years.
3 years, okay.
And that's consistent with DEP recommendation.
I think that's a good idea.
Do you want those reports to go to the Board of Health and then be copied to you or something, or do you want a
Well,
separate?
Every time
how do you want to do
every
it?
time it's pumped, they have to put a
It goes
record
to
into
the
the Board of Health anyway. Right,
So
so
is
that's
that
automatic.
satisfactory, or do you want it to
No,
come to you?
to the Conservation.
Right,
Commission.
the order of
Yeah.
conditions should reference you folks, but it'll automatically go back to the Board of
Okay,
Health
right.
anyway, just because the
Got it.
septic hauler has to submit to the Board of Health that they did that, so.
So the annual inspection and the 3-year,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
but both reports should go to the
Yes.
Conservation Agency.
yeah.
I agree, that really is the headwaters of Pine Tree Brook. Okay,
All right.
anything else? Any comments from abutters? Questions, members of the public? Any further discussion here? Is there a motion to issue an order of conditions with the extra special conditions that I mentioned?
And the modifications to
Yeah.
moving the vent, the monitoring well
Yes.
outside.
Outside.
Any other special conditions?
I'll second.
So moved, yeah.
Further discussion? All in favor? Thanks.
Great, thank you for your time.
Okay. Oh, you know what? How far are you away from the stream?
From the stream, 31 feet.
All right. We don't need a second vote.
If it was within 25 feet, then
Right,
we'd
we have
need
to
to
take
vote.
two votes.
Yeah.
You'll
Got
give
it.
your revised.
Yes, we'll be, because we're also submitting a full engineering plan for approval, so that will also be sent to you. That will show all of the revisions that we've talked about tonight, the monitoring
Yes, that's-
pipe and so
those
forth.
two changes.
Is that satisfactory? There doesn't seem a lot of point to revising the concept plan. It's the same plan, but the
And that's all
more
gonna be done
detailed.
this week. The
Or
final
we can do
plan will
both,
be
whatever you
prepared.
want.
We'll be ready.
Well, we do need a stamped plan for our
Yes.
file as to.
Well, that would be the,
approved.
that should be the Fridays.
Once we get approval from Board of Health, because you're gonna make it contingent on the Board of Health
Correct.
approval.
Correct.
We will submit that approved plan to you folks for the file, I should say, for the
Yes.
record.
Okay,
The 31 feet that you gave us is to the dimension of the Presby system. The 25 feet is a non-disturbance zone, so the excavation cannot be closer than 25
The
feet.
excavation, I shouldn't say, the excavation we show here, because we do show we show the 25 on this plan.
Okay, and you're outside of it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, the
25
25 is excavation, it's not the system?
The
Okay.
excavation of that impervious barrier will be, I shouldn't say, it will be closer, but it's not within the 25,
Correct.
so we're outside
Okay.
the 25.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's an improvement, so we're glad.
thank you. I think so.
That's an impressive
Do you
system.
want to
Yeah.
put it as a
Yeah.
condition?
I
of
wanted today, I
excavation
was so
of the other
fascinated with it.
one?
Yes.
Did you? Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Next on the agenda, notice of intent, 1016 Blue Hill Avenue.
And does it let you reduce it by 50%, or?
Yeah, I'd love to have one.
Folks, we gotta pick up our
Yep.
speed and quit watching the clock here.
Yeah.
Okay.
We spent a long time with one of them. Thanks for your patience.
You're welcome. My name is Michael Count, here on behalf of Thin Vu, the proposed project on 1016 Blue Hill Avenue. The project site is located on the east side of Blue Hill Avenue, about 1,500 feet north of the intersection of Milton Street. In the residential district, it's approximately 1.3 acres of land with 0.9 acres of upland area. The wetland line in blue was delineated on March 30th by Environmental Consulting and Restoration. And the riverfront area, the 100-foot and 200-foot setbacks here are shown in purple, while the wetland buffer zone, 50 and 100 footers are shown in light blue. Balster Brook is located on the southwesterly portion of the lot, which is right here with those 100-foot and 200-foot setback lines shown. The proposed project involves the existing dwelling. Currently, there's an existing deck in the southeast portion of the house. They're looking to remove that deck and install a proposed living room addition. Also, they're looking to expand the existing garage on the northeast portion of the house. With that, they're going to need to reroute the forced main that leads to the septic system, the leaching field out back in the rear of the property. With this project, there's associated minor site grading, just to grade, make sure that the runoff is going away from the proposed addition in the rear of the property. In dealing with this, basically we're giving the homeowner two options, both comply with Title V. One is installing a small retaining wall with an impervious liner behind it. The second is just installing an impervious liner closer to the septic system and grading down from there. Again, both comply with Title V. And basically all proposed work is on existing altered land within the riverfront area. And the closest point of the proposed work to the wetland, the BVW line, is 43 feet. You can see here in green is the 25-foot no disturbance zone. So we're well outside of that. In addition, there's a proposed stake hay bale with silt fence line down gradient of all the proposed work to ensure no sedimentation into the resource areas.
What's the wetland line? Is that a top of bank, or is that soil analysis in the BVW?
The blue line is the BVW, and the top of bank line is this dotted line.
Okay.
So it's kind of a fragmented wetland line, because basically the grassy area goes right up to that top of bank in this section.
Tree line indicated, or a growth line indicated at the lower section, is that, and I'm assuming everything up, I'm looking at this edge, this line here, comes down along.
Yep.
Everything up to that is lawn? Is that line real, and is everything up to that lawn?
Yes, that's the existing tree line.
And that's realistic? I mean,
Yep.
That's okay, and then everything from here up to that is?
Yep, that's pre-existing lawn.
We're going to look at this site?
Yeah, I think you should.
I think we should.
Can you talk a little bit about the proposed foundation and excavations for the installation of the living room?
Yep. Basically, the existing dwellings, it's a single story, all on a slab. So that's what the proposed addition is. It's all on just a slab foundation, including as well as the garage. That's what the.
I don't think you can do a slab foundation in the current building code.
Let me just see. Double check that. It could just be the garage that's a slab.
You need to take it down below frost line. If you could figure it out for the sidewalk, that'd be fine.
Okay.
If you could, just to talk, and my concern was really what the extent of the excavation for the foundation is gonna be, just so that we understand, because the hay bale line doesn't look realistic to me, based on the construction. I suspect it's gonna move away, and then the bringing, you're gonna end up bringing in heavy equipment in order to do the foundation, I'm assuming. And I wanna talk on site, if we could talk about where you propose to do that. My concern was that the 25-foot setback, but if it's all lawn, it's really a moot point. And you won't be able to bring it around the other way because of the septic field. You know what I mean? I mean, the 25-foot is closer to the house and you'd be able to bring equipment by, but it's all lawn, so it's at a moot point. Do you know what I mean? You understand?
Yeah.
Okay. If we can talk about it on site, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd imagine they'd be bringing everything in from this side
But is there a
Before
concern
they-
with the septic field? You don't want to take the equipment over the septic field, typically.
No, and that's located further away
Oh, this-
from the house. That's, what are we looking at? That's probably 25 feet from the existing house.
So you got enough room.
Yep. And we say refer to the architectural plans on the details for the addition, but as I'm looking more closely at them now, it does look like there's a footing for that addition. As well as the garage, it looks like 10-inch diameter, sonotube concrete footings.
The package that I received didn't have the architectural stuff, and if you referred to it, they ought to be included.
Okay.
So if you could provide those prior to the site walk, that would be great.
Any other questions from commissioners? Abutters, members of the public? I suggest we see, where are we at 9 o'clock?
70 Parker Drive. So we could do
That
9.
won't be very long.
No, so 9:30.
9:30?
Okay, yeah.
Where are we at 8?
9:30 on.
This Saturday.
This
Saturday.
Coming
Oh,
Saturday,
next one, okay.
16th.
Yep.
Okay. I'll provide, how many copies would you like of the architectural plan? Just me to mail those in or bring them to the site walk?
Actually, if I was to walk into the site walk, because I'm leaving Thursday. I'll
Okay,
make
yeah,
the
if you could
site
just
walk.
bring,
Bring
I'm
it.
interested in a copy. I don't know if everyone else is interested.
Yeah, I'd like one.
And we want a copy for
The
the
folder.
file.
Okay.
So 3 or 4, right? And if you just bring them to the site walk, that'd be
Actually,
fine.
5. One for the folder, then if there's 4 of you.
Can you put this in an email tomorrow about what, the agenda?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
All right, just so we know where we're going.
Okay.
So that's 3. All right, and with no other questions, members of the public, I think we're all set. We'll see you.
I just need the green slips.
Yep.
We'll see you at 9:30 on Saturday morning.
Sounds like a plan.
Good, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is 1383 Brush Hill Road. Hi, welcome.
Hello. This is Barbara Piper. She is the owner of the property that's before you for consideration of delineation of a wetlands line. And I'm Marion McKettrick, her attorney, and Bob Hannigan prepared the plan. So I can explain just very quickly to you the background for this application is that in December, we brought an application for approval not required lot to the planning board, and it was approved at the end of December. So you have, I believe you have a copy of the A&R plan. It shows you 2 lots, one lot with Barbara Piper's house on it, which is on a private way off Brush Hill Road, and the second lot next to it, which has been defined as another lot. So there is a wetland on the edge of the property, and Mrs. Piper is working with a prospective buyer. We need to have you agree to the definition of the wetland line in order that the buyer will know where that's located and then can proceed with plans to build a house in the lot. I assume that you have to look at this on a site walk, is that correct?
Yes.
Will you be able to include this Saturday?
Sure.
With your other schedule?
And this was done by Goddard Consulting, so I don't know if you have that information. But it seems to be about in the same position as it has been, because this has been looked at over a couple of times over the last probably 10 years. So
Yeah,
that's-
I remember, I think we've been here.
Yeah. So that's good, it hasn't really changed, given all the snow, I think.
I had one question. So this is a new a new division of property.
Yes.
Why is the division of property line the shape that it is?
I think you mean that triangular corner?
Well, it's canted at the corners, and rather than being a straight subdivision, kind of
Bob
division.
Hannigan drew the lot lines, And I believe what he was trying to do was to preserve landscaping features that are on Mrs.
Oh, okay.
Piper's lot. So when you go to the property, you'll see that there are some really very significant trees and
Oh, nice.
landscaping. It's an old property, this is an historic house, the house that she lives in. And he was doing the best he could to allow her lot line to give her as much of that yard as possible. And that's why it jogs in and out. However, the lot has to be of a certain size in order to conform to the zoning bylaw. So this is what he came up with as a solution.
And also I have a large stone wall that
Yes.
runs about.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
it follows the property's characteristics to the extent that it can.
I'm happy you're doing the ANRAD process beforehand so that they can design, they can
Oh,
be
yeah.
aware of what the design is and develop it appropriately. It makes it easier in terms of the design. It also makes it easier on us in the future in terms of review and approval.
Great.
Yeah.
Right, any questions about it as members of the public?
Yeah.
10 o'clock? See you about 10 o'clock?
Okay.
Perfect, thank you very much.
You think we'll make it there by 10?
Absolutely. You know how efficient we are.
That's an abstract kind of 10 o'clock.
You asked for comments?
Oh, yeah, I did. I didn't see you. Thank you very much for coming in.
I'm Nick Benke. I'm at 60 Hemingway Drive, also known as 1359 Brush Hill Road. I'm on the board of Friends of Hemingway Woods, Inc., 501c3 nonprofit that was involved in the, what do we call it, the discussions on Milton Muse. There's a pretty large group, primarily Precinct 7, I believe it is, of Milton and the surrounding areas. So we have a general concern that the area be developed in a proper way, that all this work that's gone in, and this committee and other committees here, boards in Milton and in Canton were very helpful in getting Mass Housing to write an extensive write-up, and as a result of that, Milton Muse went away. In this case here, this particular property, DeSell and Burke has done an extensive wetlands study. So that should be at least part of your going-in position when you look at the property, that is already in existence.
On the same lot?
Yes, it covers the
I
full.
think that development site for Milton Muse originally included all of Mrs. Piper's property.
Oh, okay.
So the large plans that you will have somewhere in your file for Milton Muse will show this corner, which is why we knew that there was probably a wetlands line right in the corner of this lot.
If it can't fit into my file box, do we have some new ones for
What did you say,
Saturday?
Kathy?
That's,
The Milton Muse plan ever filed with us, I don't.
we had a couple of informational walks.
Well, I can give you a copy of what was in their submission to Mass Housing, which everybody has, that's a public document.
And I know
So
I've seen that.
if you would like a copy of that, we'll provide some copies for the site walk so that you can kind of see the context
That
for the
would be
lot.
That would be
worthwhile to
great.
see, yes.
Thank you.
Do we know where the spotted salamanders were in regards to this
Do you
project?
want to bring that one on?
I believe they were over on,
Not on my property.
not here, on the other side.
I would love it. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Well, the subject of
Salamanders.
salamanders, you know, they have a, how would I call it, a living area. So they do their breeding in the lowlands, only a couple of weeks a year, and then they, their habitat, their permanent habitat, is in the upper woodlands. So they have a rather large area of habitation, and that's something that would be of some concern as well in this instance.
If you could give us some information regarding that range, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I am.
Matt Guerin actually gives a lecture on that.
Yeah.
At the Mass Association of Conservation Commission.
Yep.
Do you want to come down? If I could add, my name is Denny Swenson. Denny Swenson. I'm a neighbor on Hemingway Drive, and I'm providing this information. I'm thrilled that Barbara wants to put a single-family house here, and this isn't necessarily to be a non-support of that. I think it's wonderful to see that, because the last time we were here, we were looking at 4- and 5-story buildings. So, but at the time we were looking at 4- and 5-story buildings, we did learn a lot about the, this ACEC. And then I've included some of the biomaps that are there for your help in just understanding the special, unique area that this is in. And then I did include the 3-page packet. And it has, recommendations management recommendations on the 3rd page. And when you're on the site walk, you'll see this is a shot from Fowl Meadow. So the land in the neighborhood just sort of blends in, and then you see the Great Blue Hill. So the salamanders were, if I could put 2 X's, I'd put them approximately, approximately here, would you say? And then the next year we found more here. And so the salamanders come from the upland, and then they come down to the vernal pools. So
Brush Hill Road?
Brush Hill Road is here, and Avenue A is here. And I think this is Barbara Piper's. I think there's a number of maps in there, but that's roughly Barbara Piper's. So it was roughly down here. Yeah, this is Hemingway. And so this is where we found the salamanders, here and here. And Fowl Meadow is downland. And this map at the end would show these pink little salamanders, which is where they called them suspected vernal pools. And so you can see this map. So Barbara's house is roughly here, and the salamanders are here. So while I'm not saying that I don't want a house there, I would just share this information with you to be aware of the unique habitat that's there and take that into consideration in the placement of the house or the placement of the pavement and all of those things, to be considerate of the rare habitat that's right there and the pathway that they are on.
Sounds good. Have you seen any this year, this April, May?
This year we didn't, we went out, but the snow was still there. It was this crazy winter snow, you know, the 8 feet of snow from February was still on the ground in April. So we didn't, but I did put in my packet a letter confirming that we did, you know, report it with the state. And I just received another one today. I can email it tomorrow if you're interested in that. So.
You reported it previously.
Yeah, we reported in
ago.
2013,
Yeah, right.
2013, and then I have another report for you from 2014.
Any other comments?
Well, just that this is, there are 3 contiguous habitats: mature upland forest, open fields, meadows, marshy floodplains, and they all come together roughly here. And so the salamanders are one example, but there are a number of other species that are dependent on having contiguous habitats near each other. So like the salamander is a great example because it needs the uplands where it lives most of the year, but then it travels down to the vernal pool to mate. So other animals and plant life have similar routines, and so that's, so it's getting late, so I won't read my whole packet, but I'll leave it to you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay,
You're
thank
welcome
you.
to come on Saturday, of course, it's a
Oh,
public.
thank you so much.
Phil just mentioned that all these drawings are on the town website.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
under
that's true,
40B.
actually.
Yeah.
That's true, I didn't know they were still there.
Yeah.
Well, I will bring a couple copies anyway, so I have it at home. It's Barbara's file. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
See you Saturday.
Okay.
Right, next.
So we're all set? Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Thank you.
Saturday.
Thank you.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay,
So
thank
should
you.
I be on the walk also then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
please.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Notice of intent, 693, 711 Randolph Avenue, continued hearing.
So, John, I've got to recuse myself, as you know. There are 2 afterwards. I was going to go, you still maintain a quorum, is that okay?
It is. I'm just wondering, 52 Hemlock Drive,
Unless we can flip it, unless,
Certificate of compliance,
that's not a,
a swimming pool.
oh, that went in. I had
Yeah.
forgotten that. Okay, all right. And then informational 156 Forbes, what's that?
That's with Ned Cochran, he just wants to find out if he'd have a site walk on Saturday, what needs to be done for them to get a certificate of compliance.
Is that Michael Moore?
Morris, yes.
All right. Are you around Saturday?
yes.
Okay, all right. So, yes. We can put, you want to go back to 150, we have to see if there's a certificate of compliance issue, right?
Yes, we'd like to invite
We're
the,
talking about Forbes Road.
Right, 156 Forbes.
156,
for the record,
okay.
Ned Corcoran, been retained by Michael Moore and his husband to assist in bringing this to closure.
Right.
For certificate of compliance. There are some,
Remember, we just bounced an agenda item though, so I don't mean to make it uncomfortable, Ned, but,
and all I'm asking for is a site walk.
Yeah, that's where we're going.
Okay, good.
Done.
We can do that.
it was easy, see?
Yeah.
But now, we're on the other side of town, and we're probably gonna have to see 52 Hemlock, if that's an order. of
On the
compliance.
way.
So it's probably gonna be close to 11,
That's fine.
11.
all right? So we'll see you there.
Great, thank you.
Perfect, thank you very much. All right.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks. All right, so I didn't mean to bounce that agenda item, but that helps
Sorry,
us.
what time did you put that for?
11.
11.
I'm just guessing because we're gonna have to stop
Hemlock
at
Drive
52
at
Hemlock Drive.
10:30, yeah, so. You'll be late.
All right.
We will be late at 11.
Yeah. So we're at 711 Randolph Avenue? Thanks.
So we've covered 9 and 10 at this point already? We don't have to do
Is
anything else?
actually anybody here from 52 Hemlock? Is that just a site visit?
Okay. 9 and 10 here.
Do you know, Kathy, is anybody here from 52 Hemlock?
Okay, so this is our last item then.
Maybe next time the last can be first. And, tomatoes,
Kathy, was anybody here for 52 Hemlock?
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just,
I've done it
we just
myself
stop by
on
there, we
the
could put that on the agenda for
Cement
10:30.
bounds, every-
All right.
You want to put that at 10:30?
Yes.
Yes. And then we'll end up, we'll complete the tour at 11 at 156 Fourth. All right, thank you.
Good evening. Jim Burke with the Selberg and Associates, here with Paul Holland of BMW Trust and Scott Morrison of Ecotech and Marilyn Newman of Mintz Levin. Yes, we submitted a fairly large package that was submitted to the ZBA, had, stormwater, soils, revised plans. We also had a site walk on the site, and this is our last, this is our first meeting since we've submitted that information. And just, I'd really kind of open it up. If you guys had any questions with regards to any of the data that was submitted, I did ask, you asked I looked for 'em, specifically. right? I know, and you know what, my fault, I forgot, and I was scrambling to get those profiles done, and I made copies for everybody.
Oh, good, thank you.
So if you want to just, I guess we can just pass these right around. And what they are is basically one-to-one profiles, one through the roadway and one through the site.
Have you met with the ZBA since
No.
our meeting? Our site meeting, when we were out?
Did they have the consultant? No, what was? I don't think so. The next meeting is the 20th. And that's when the abutters will have their say, and then, their review. And actually, just for your information, I'm meeting with the review engineer on Friday to discuss.
Is that niche?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Can you just tell us an overview of, everyone's asked these questions. I've looked at the peer review, I looked at the niche, I looked at the rebuttal to the peer review. Where do we stand?
Where we stand right now is that.
Follow me, in other words,
Where
there's 100 questions.
Right. So the package that we gave you with the peer review response,
Right.
that's where we stand.
So that's the last.
Well, and then now it's back into Nich's court, and we're meeting with Nitch on Friday to discuss if they have any additional comments based on the revised submission.
Where are you meeting with Niche?
It's in this building, I think it's on the second floor at 10 o'clock.
This building?
Yes. I believe so. It's a posted meeting. So,
Posted as a ZBA meeting?
correct. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a ZBA meeting, but it's a public hearing. So that being said, the red lines represent the section.
Yep.
And then basically, this is the one-to-one section. You can see, how a meeting grade as we come, this is the driveway section at the top. So a meeting grade, and then here's all the fill coming up, and then the cut up at the top. Now, you can get a real appreciation of the 6% slope that comes all the way up in that direction, and how it's, a lot, less steep than in the existing grade. This section kind of shows you the approach, the tiered effect, and how we're taking, cutting this and filling this. So it's kind of a stepped effect.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay. So the first question I had was concerning the drive section. What is the looks like there's a 10-foot change in grade between the existing and the proposed grade.
Right.
For
good portion of it.
A significant portion of it. Is the intent that that entire face is exposed, the concrete blocks that you're proposing to use?
Yes.
Basically, you're looking at a 10-foot high wall that runs.
Correct.
That this thing is, I don't know what you call it. It's like a bridge.
Yeah.
It's like a bridge that runs across. Yeah.
The wall, retaining wall.
And the intent is that that's just exposed concrete, those
Correct.
block elements. Okay.
Correct. It's face, so it's not just a sheer concrete.
Stone face.
Yeah, it's got, it's supposedly, looks like a granite cut.
Yeah.
But it's,
Okay.
it's,
No, I was just wondering, I was trying to understand, I'm not worried about the material, I was thinking about the exposed face and the height of that, it's a 10-foot.
Yep.
It's significant. The second question I had is, on the building section, the proposed grade above the wetland replication area, on the section indicates that it's a battered wall, and we've had conversations about the retaining wall.
the retaining wall isn't shown. This is like the slope. Here's, if you look at, that's the wetland replication here, and then it's a fast grade up. The retaining wall should be here, unless I've drafted it incorrectly.
Well, as I read this, it appears that the retaining wall should be vertical off of the corner of the upper corner. It should drop vertical, based on what we talked about before, where this shows it as a battered wall, which would imply that it's actually encroaching on the 25-foot setback.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
So where right now it's shown, it says the line that says proposed grade as a slope should actually be a vertical line off of that corner.
Right, I think that's right there. That should
Right.
be vertical. Correct.
So it should be vertical, and that's the intent, right?
Yeah.
Based on what we've talked about.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That is vertical. I can certainly correct that in the drawing.
What about, and this may implicate the meeting you're going to have with Mitch, but I know they had made a recommendation of expanding one sidewalk from 4 to 5 feet, and then suggesting or recommending a second sidewalk on the other side of the street, also of 5 feet.
Right.
Have you responded to that?
I have, and it's basically that we're standing true to the 24 feet wide pavement and the 4-foot sidewalk.
Is that a design issue, or is that, are you concerned with?
We're concerned with the
wetlands
impacts. And you know, the fact that it's an old story, we've discussed it, and that the 24 feet is sufficient to handle the traffic. We had a meeting with Mass DOT and an informal hearing with several department heads a couple of weeks ago, and specifically brought up the 24 feet, if they had an issue with it. They did not.
My question, it was not designed to kind of put you into a corner on the 5,000 square feet. It was actually a question as to whether or not you could, maybe it's just cost, but couldn't you avoid the 5,000 square feet of alteration by just eliminating the, what you call an abutment, and spreading it out on piers?
And you know, my answer to that question is no. And the reason being is that if I came in here with a flyover bridge, you know, there would be, the impacts would be shading and whatever else, and whatever abutments that would need to be appropriated for that particular bridge. My estimation is that given the impacts generated from that shading is still an alteration, and it's still going to contribute to that 5,000 square feet. And we've discussed that in this room and on other projects. So that's where I'm coming from that.
Some of us disagree with that, but
yeah,
we agree to disagree.
That's fine, but you know, I've been in this room with this board, and that's been raised in the past. So to me, you know, if you're flying a bridge over and you're shading the sun, and that's considered an impact, so is filling it. So, and I agree there's, you know, different degrees with regards to impact and the like, but at the same time, the 5,000 square feet is 5,000 square feet.
Of impact.
Of impact.
Right. So you can't even cantilever the edge. You
No.
can't cantilever it out the foot to get in a wider sidewalk.
There's an open grading roadway system.
Yeah, you know.
Right?
Different impact.
But again, then
It's the impact.
yeah.
And air and water and light goes right through
Sure.
an open grading.
Yeah. You still got to deal with the utilities.
Pardon me?
You still have to deal with the utilities
Hung below.
and the like, so. It's, you know, like I say, this corridor has been, it's tight. And it's tight for construction, and it's tight for permitting. And it's, and honestly, and again, it's an old story, is that, you know, we analyzed the best possible access to this property, and we found it. And we designed it, and we're sticking to it.
This is, it's going to sound like it's a non-jurisdictional question, but to the extent that it was suggested on the grounds of public safety, basically for kids walking to and from school, I think it's within our purview only because it does, as you say, it might impact the wetlands if you were to, you know, expand the width. But I'm really trying to, you know, balance the public safety component of it towards the wetlands protection component of it. And, you know, we don't want to be in a position of we're going to put kids at risk and you know, to protect the skunk capital.
Well, I guess from my perspective, John, not to cut you off, and I know where you're going with it, and I know where, you know, the you know, department heads in the town are going. I'm anxious to see what Nitch has to say about it, as well as Jeffrey Dirk on the traffic aspects of it. And if it turns out that, you know, that maybe we do have to readjust it, you know, based on these comments, you know, and take another hard look at it, I say we would consider it. But at the same time, The safety issues, I believe, are not as extremely dangerous as perceived on the design. And I base that on doing several roads of 24 feet wide and sidewalks of 4 feet, given the foot traffic expected on this particular roadway. I don't see kids walking to school from here. I see kids being picked up at a school bus up at the corner of the property. So we'll see.
At the corner of the property, is that,
But
is it
the corner of
turnaround
the parking
area?
lot.
What's that?
On site, corner of the parking lot.
Okay. All right. And that's basically that turnaround section you said for fire trucks and trash trucks? And
Yes.
Okay, I'm just,
Yeah, I know. It's
tight.
It's the issue. And like I say, I've shown the turnarounds, movements that are, the vehicles are capable of doing, and I'm comfortable with it. So, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, so.
Can I ask you, maybe it's an impolitic question, but I just saw in our packet that we got Matt Byrne, who did the vernal pool assessment.
Yes, sir.
Did you get a copy of the report?
Yes.
Okay. But he said the bill came back to us. Is that taken care of?
No, I thought I'd be happy to reimburse you, but he was your consultant. I assumed you were paying him, and then I would reimburse the board.
Well, we did it under, I always get the statute wrong, it's 44P.
Just because of the way the accountant is set up, you would need to, or you can give me a check, I'll make a copy of it, and I'll forward it to Mr. Burns.
Okay.
Providing the check to the town and having the town provide it and documenting that.
That's
Just
fine.
as long as it's clear it was your consultant.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's fine. Then I'll get a check to you then for that.
Okay, good, thank you.
No problem.
And everybody's seen that, right? Seen the report?
Yes.
Yep. He was good to do it, quickly, and Scott, you were with him, right?
Yeah, it was great. It was, I don't think I've met him in person before. It was nice to, we walked the site. I took him to each of the wetlands. We spent some time walking through all the wetlands and providing a complete analysis that the commission was looking for. So I think it was well worth our time to go and look at the areas. You had some concerns about the vernal pools, so I thought it worked out well that we were able to look at everything and the appropriate time of year and come up with some conclusions. So
Good, thank you.
if you have any questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer.
No, we
I think
appreciate
I think
the
report's
access.
Pretty
clear.
Pretty clear. So.
Okay. Any other questions in terms of additional data needed? So I'm still a little hung up on this water flow because of the abutment component of it. Putting the water flow, the difference between the alternatives analysis between what I call the abutment with the 10-foot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're good. The abutment with the 10-foot, conduit for the water underneath, as opposed to the concrete plank that you'll be set on pilings, and the water flow.
Okay.
It just seems to, and I'm putting cost aside. I don't
Yeah.
even know what the
Now,
difference is.
is it?
Does the water flow more easily without the abutment?
Probably, yeah, I would have to agree with that. Could you measure it? I'm not sure you could. Because what you're looking at is, as the water comes down through here, it would back up slightly and then and funnel through the culvert. Now, if you had them all open, it would just kind of flow through. Now, the backup itself, I'm not too sure. I mean, I could do a hydraulic grade line and see if it does back up at all in certain storm events.
Well, that's why I'm interested, because I'm looking at those houses on Randolph Avenue, and if there's water that's blocked and it mounds, it's going to hit those houses, I think.
Yeah, the thing, I guess the answer would be is to provide that analysis. I'm confident that the 10-foot, actually it's 12 feet now, culvert is so wide that you wouldn't be able to analyze that backup, because the spread backup is just so wide. I mean, if we were like sitting like in here, if it was a channelized wetland and it wasn't just a wide open wet meadow, you certainly, if it wasn't designed correctly, you certainly would have a measurable backup. And that's how they do highway culverts. That's how you analyze them.
Can't you base it on tributary area and the volume and coming through? And another question associated with that is, if you're doing one culvert, does doing a second or a third culvert offset the, I mean, is the cost of the culvert comparable to the cost of the abutment?
I would say that that they're not exactly cheap, but I mean, in the whole realm of it, it'd be maybe a half percentage point of the site, so.
No,
I mean,
but if you look at the bridge element and you say, well, the culvert versus the cost of the concrete blocks and the assembly of the rest of it, if you were to put in 2 or 3 culverts in a row, therefore getting you 24 or 36 feet.
Yeah, no, if we were gonna double it up, I'd probably.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So
So, I'd honestly, I think 3 would be overkill.
Okay, but if we look at a one that's only 10 feet, the concern was, that we talked about before, was if anything, a branch, a tree blocks that, now you have, your calculations aren't viable anymore. And then the concern about flooding the houses becomes much more significant.
Sure.
Where if we do a second one, even though your calculations showed that one was adequate, a second one gives you that redundancy in terms of flow.
Right.
And
Now, yeah, and just as far as the blockage occurring to a tree, it's, that wet meadow is pretty wide open. It'd be tough for a tree to block it. But that being said, redundancy is always nice.
Right. And in terms of cost, is the cost of one of those culverts reasonably offset by the savings of the concrete that you're not installing, or is the culvert on a multiple scale?
I'd have to say probably not, just from, like I say, if you guys want another culvert, I think we probably can accommodate you. That being said, I think you'd end up losing the cost just from the installation of it alone. They're somewhat of a, they're not exactly, it'd be more labor, that's all. So I'd see.
You're dropping it in place with the crane.
Right.
The crane's on site for the other one.
You still gotta do the strip footings,
Okay.
but, yeah, I mean, putting one in instead of 2, yeah, we're talking not a lot, right, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't, no.
Okay.
But I still haven't got a good sense of which way would be better. My gut tells me that it would be better to have piers and concrete plank, but I'm doing that entirely without cost analysis.
Right, and our cost analysis showed it was, I believe it was 3 times more expensive.
3 times?
Yeah. Wasn't it 3?
It's more, yeah.
Yeah, I think it might have even been more than that.
Okay.
What are the spans on those planks? 30, 40 feet?
No, they were smaller than that.
They're shorter than that?
Yeah.
So you couldn't do your concrete block assemblies on either side and basically do a plank bridge? Or is that, you're better off doing the culvert?
Much better doing the culvert. Every time you expand that, it's substantially more expensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I had 12-foot planks, because they still have to be able to set them.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you should be able to do planks 30 feet.
Yeah, no.
I mean, the parking garage is nothing, right?
Yeah.
Couple double Ts and you've got 30, 40 feet.
Right, and a significant amount of steel and the like, that's expensive.
Steel and aluminum. Steel's already in the blank.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just
Right.
throwing out ideas.
Spitball.
Yeah, spitball, exactly.
Can you just help me, and you probably filled me in on this before, but I'm just going back ways, to the building, the lower building?
Yep.
As I'm looking at it on your map, left-hand corner, that area is the replication area?
Right here, in here.
Right, okay. I thought it was even closer to the corner of the drive, or closer to the corner of the building. But my only point was, on the original map, you had, that was your snow disposal area?
Yeah.
Where have you put the snow disposal?
The snow
area?
disposal area was up in here.
Yeah.
And we've moved that to down in here, up in here, over in here, over in here, and along the retention.
And the replication area, just show me that again?
Right here and right here. And, yep.
All right. All right, do we need more information? Is there anything that they haven't provided that we need? What are you expecting from us?
I'd say we're looking to get on your June, this is May, right? Your June hearing, and we expect to have, I'd say based on May 20th, with the information gathered from the ZBA hearing, I would hope to have, if not final revised documents and additional information that you requested. I assume you still wanting to have the hydraulic analysis through the culvert.
Yes.
So we'll submit that a week prior, if not earlier. And
Can you make sure that we get copied on anything? If you sit down with niche engineering and resolve some of the questions that they've raised, can you get us a copy of whatever the resolution is?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
What is the story on the granite curb?
The granite curb?
Right.
Well, the curbing that Niche commented on the curbing as being, I don't remember the term they used.
Granite curb is required roadway in Milton. And these people have asked the Board of Appeals for a waiver from the granite curb to go to asphalt.
Right, the asphalt was
No,
what they
we're
were
going
talking
with
about.
concrete. So the granite curb requirement that I picked up on what Nick was talking about was the granite returns that are required from MassDOT. And then we're transitioning to concrete.
But the rest of the curbing is all concrete.
Correct.
So it's dimensional concrete.
Correct.
Okay.
What about, and I should know this, and at one time I did, but Scott, I can direct a question to you. On a wildlife assessment for this kind of a project, I know there's an A form and a B form, one is extensive and one isn't. And to be honest with you, I can't remember which triggers the long form and which triggers the short form.
Under 5,000 square feet is the A form. You exceed 5,000 square feet or exceed double the threshold, so you would require a category, and there was one provided with the original wetland replication protocol.
So the B form has been done.
Yeah, the A form has been done. A B form would be required, for instance, if you had greater than 100 linear feet of bank impact, where it's double, the threshold for wildlife habitat evaluation would be 50 feet. So if you exceed 100 feet, you need to do the appendix B.
So you've done the A.
We've provided the A.
And what does it, can you just sort of summarize it for us?
I think to summarize that we found that there's no important wildlife habitat at the crossing.
At the crossing.
At the crossing, but what about the rest? I mean, the impact of the
That's
whole...
that's what the impact assessment's for, is
Just the
for the
crossing.
wetland impacts for the crossing.
But for the whole site, you don't have that study done.
It's only required for impacts.
I'm just trying to remember, back when we did the cell tower, we had a pretty extensive wildlife assessment.
We do,
And I can't remember what triggered it.
Well, it's part of the bylaw, the town bylaw.
To do a wildlife assessment?
Yeah.
But that's not limited to like the crossing.
You want to opine on that, whether we have to opine?
I think what Scott has described is correct, concerning
That
the
only-
requirements of the state regulations.
Yeah, the question was the town bylaw, though. I don't know
Could have
the
been
answer.
something else required under a different town bylaw, or zoning or something else of that nature.
Wetland bylaw.
15, chapter 15. I
I'm
think
not
what you're
aware of
referring to.
anything in.
I think your town bylaw uses the same forms and the same analyses.
In some areas, but we do
overall
protect other
site,
interests.
Not just a wetland when you cross
Well,
it.
it's where the project involves work in either a resource or in a buffer zone. That's the
The entire
subject of
project is
that's
a-
the subject of the assessment.
Right, but I think our point is that the impact on the buffer zone is far greater than just in where the crossing is.
So the Form A, Scott, that deals with the impact in the resource area, correct?
Yeah, Form A, or B for that matter, only addresses impacts to wetland resource areas.
At crossing.
So it doesn't, there's
You
no
caveated-
wildlife.
you
wildlife
caveated-
habitat
The buffer, and I thought that was,
assessment.
I thought that was true.
I misspoke about the Form A. What I meant was that the concern of the Conservation Commission's overall assessment is activities in the resource areas and the buffer, not the whole site. But Scott
but we've got-
has described the specific wildlife assessment that was completed in accordance with the state regulations.
In accordance
For the
with
crossing.
The crossing.
In accordance with the state regulations.
On a
The
crossing.
impact
For
on-
the crossing is what he said.
Crossing.
He
The
said for
impact
the
on the
crossing.
resource area. That's where the project impacts the resource area.
Right, but now we're talking about the buffer.
It's not relevant to the question about Form A and Form B.
Okay, we're talking about a wildlife assessment in the buffer.
I think that's not required, am I right?
That's correct. There's no requirement for a wildlife habitat.
Under the
evaluation
town bylaw?
buffer zone.
Now, he's talking about the state wetlands. I don't know under the.
I don't
town
believe there's
bylaw.
one under the bylaw as well.
There is.
But
Did you say?
I didn't find it, but there's a.
Could you provide, and I believe I asked for this before, could you provide the structural section of the retaining wall of the lower building on the wetland side? And the concern,
This wall here?
yep,
It's the same stone strong product.
did you give, I don't,
It should be.
Is it-
I
I looked
put,
at-
I added new cross sections and details.
And it's in there?
It's in the site
Okay, I
plan. I
didn't
do it, yeah, way in the back.
I'll look for it again.
Yeah, and honestly, if it doesn't satisfy it and you find out before, just give me a shout.
Sure.
You show details, but,
Yes.
okay, a structural detail,
Yes, what's
but you
specific
don't tell
in
me
addition.
what the construction detail. I mean, how far out from the wall is the construction gonna
You're
take
talking about
place?
excavation.
The excavation, the limit of excavation.
Well, you know.
I mean, you look at that upper corner, where that 8-foot, where that retaining wall is. See it?
This one here.
No, keep going,
Here.
keep going, up,
Up here?
keep going, up, right up in the corner.
Why don't you stand up and go show us where you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah. It's right next to the wetlands. How far, okay? What is the width of your disturbance of the wetlands? You show me the width, a detail of the wall, and you're gonna have the footing under it, what's your construction detail? How far out are you gonna go disturbing the earth?
Like I said, you create a, you excavate for the stone, you place.
That's not a stone, that's not one of your prefabricated walls.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
That's a prefabricated wall?
Yeah.
It's the step back wall.
I'm not
right?
proposing any put-in-place walls on this site.
Okay.
These are all the staggered stone
Right.
walls, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anything here in the bylaw, but I'm scanning it pretty fast.
For what?
About a wildlife assessment, not in a resource area, but rather in the.
It's in the regulations.
What's that?
It's in the regulations.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have that, Arthur? You've got the bylaw here, but do you have the rights?
I believe it's in the book.
You just have everything, don't you?
Asking you should receive.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? Members, abutters, members of the public would like to address the question?
Poor people have been sitting here all night.
It's been interesting. For the record, Robert Buckley, Raymond Bronstein. I'm just going to focus this evening on issues I think we'd like to have the commission review in their deliberations. I don't want to get into other issues that are not germane to the jurisdiction of the commission.
Thank you.
I believe one of the commissioners asked earlier about the environmental or the jurisdictional issues.
Yeah, did you say who you were representing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Joseph Mullen. Okay, 300 Highland Street. From a design standpoint, not being an engineer, but one of our big concerns is that the access drive, and germane to the commission's jurisdiction is such things as if there is ever a catastrophic failure or a failure of the wall system or the culvert, you have 90 residents in that complex, so 90 units. That's the only way in and out. So you're looking at probably having to do an emergency order and perhaps have more disturbance than was contemplated initially. So I think when you're reviewing this, you should have that in the back of your mind, how to design this so to minimize, if there is ever that situation.
You said a catastrophic failure of
Well,
what?
for instance,
Drainage?
I mean, if the wall fails, if the culvert fails, I watched, I believe, the commission's hearing, the last hearing, where there was a description of the culvert being excavated or the footings being excavated 3 feet with stone and then 18 inches, the culvert rests on that. I'm not an engineer, but there are voids, if that freezes, if there's a problem with that culvert, what happens to the residents getting in and out of that
I
site?
mean, if there's a car on fire, you know.
Well,
it blocks it.
I want to focus on the issues germane to the Conservation Commission. But I think that during your deliberations and consideration of the design, it's well within your jurisdiction to consider those types of potential initial impacts, but what the future impacts may be from a situation that would arise in that. I mean, I'm troubled by the slope and how you would handle, you have, what, a 7% slope on the road? Six. How are you going to treat the run in terms of snow removal, ice, 2 drain? I believe that the catch basins are at the base of the slope or the base of the road. If there's any freezing, how are you going to treat the roadway itself, which goes to your situation? Does a car skid out? Does it block the driveway? But those are issues for another board to consider. I assume the commission would put restrictions on what could be used to treat ice and snow accumulation on the road. We would certainly expect that, because otherwise I think they're leaching into the wetlands, which is a potential impact. I am concerned, after speaking to some engineers, about the cross hydrology. You are essentially damming a wetlands. I don't know what the flow rates are, what the volume is, but you are, in my simple mind, creating a weir where you're taking what is essentially sheet flowing today and blocking that, and either increasing velocity or backing it up, which is an alteration of a wetlands by damming the water. If someone raised the issue, if that culvert were to be blocked, if something were to fall off the road, if there was something that, then you do have a situation that has to be addressed. I don't know what the results of the vernal pool investigation was.
Yeah, there was no evidence of any.
It's okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that I looked at, and again, I'm relatively new to it, but it seems that the boring information, while there is boring information that has been supplied to the town recently, it seems the site and the wetlands impacts have been articulated prior to the boring information being available, and you're kind of backing into that situation. So I would think that the commission would be well advised to have that reviewed to confirm that the design is being proposed is consistent with the boring information, because it seems you put the cart before the horse here, and But that's something that the,
It's a good point, and we actually addressed that point with the ZBA, and we sort of tentatively agreed to share an expert on that very issue, because we don't know what the soils are gonna support. We're talking about, big culverts and, large kind, is that it?
well, I'm not worried about the support of the structural support aspects. I'm just worried about the drainage and how you're handling, complying with the stormwater guidelines, whether the borings support the current treatment of stormwater runoff, or it has to be modified, and does that plan represent how you would comply with the guidelines and handle stormwater on the site?
I can answer that.
Well, if you...
Hold it, remember it so you can answer. It didn't mean to interrupt you.
And the wildlife habitat, my understanding is while you do analyze it with respect to the resource area, the implications that the Conservation Commission does have jurisdiction to look at that as it affects the buffer zone. What's the impact in the resource area? But we can have a further discussion on that because that's well within their jurisdiction. And finally, the comment on the Mass DOT issue. It doesn't surprise me that Mass DOT would not comment on the adequacy of an internal drive. They're not concerned about that, nor do they have jurisdictional issues with that. I mean, they may focus on the intersection of the drive with their state-regulated highway, and I don't know what the conditions would be with respect to drainage at that location, and does it pool there? Could you just show me where your drainage is going?
Here, I believe.
So if for any reason those are blocked, this Mass Highway, I would assume would be concerned about pooling and icing in the highway, but.
So it wouldn't have nothing to do with that.
In all due respect, I haven't verified the material. I've sat here and listened and I've watched you on tape, but you say those things, but we'll get into those from a technical standpoint. But those are our issues I think the commission should focus on. And they are significant issues, because I think from a design standpoint, and I think the engineer indicated that initially, it is a difficult site. There is only one way in and one way out. And I'm less concerned about how traffic circulates inside the site than I am if something blocks that driveway and causes problems from a jurisdictional standpoint, where you have runoff into the wetlands or untreated catastrophic failure or a minor failure. If that wall on either side is deficient at any point in time, access to the site is compromised. And you're probably facing an emergency order to rectify the situation quickly, because you have residents that cannot get in or out of their residence. So those are the issues that we just would request that the commission focus on.
Can you explain something to, in the area where the culvert is gonna be? What's the road drainage like? Where's the water going that lands on the road?
So I have a catch basin here and a catch basin here that captures everything from here. The only thing that's gonna be drained into the catch basins down here is this roadway. Mass DOT won't allow you to drain onto that property.
That's right.
So we have this catch basin here, and it's gonna go back to a storm scepter here and release to the wetland.
Is there a possibility when you're plowing snow that the snow cascades into the wetlands?
No, I mean.
What prevents that?
You're gonna have guardrails, you're gonna have curbing.
Well, you only have 4 feet, right?
4 feet.
What's the separation between the edge of the wall and the layout of the roadway? You have a 4-foot sidewalk, and then...
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, you might be in trouble if we have another winter,
Yeah.
like we just had, as to where the kids are gonna walk.
So that is an alteration too, putting...
So how are they gonna plow the sidewalk?
Say again?
How are they gonna plow the sidewalk?
You'll have to, plow the sidewalks after you plow the road.
You're gonna plow it, we're gonna put the snow from the sidewalk.
Back into the road and plow the road again.
keep shifting it back and forth.
I've seen it done.
But those are the issues I think the commission should focus on, that you're not migrating into the wetlands.
Where's the drainage coming from? Are you gonna treat, in your operation and maintenance plan, how are you gonna treat the roadway surface for snow and ice?
Right now, we're looking to sand it and treat it with not salt, but, what's the calcium chloride, is that
Calcium
worse?
chloride.
So the water that, when the snow melts, the calcium chloride's gonna drain into the wetlands.
Correct.
So it's gonna change the alkalinity of all those wetlands.
But keep in mind, you have the DPW facility with salt and sand stored there directly up gradient.
I can't control the DPW facility. Okay.
So you can put the restrictions on with regards to how to
They may be
salt
gone
it.
tomorrow.
What about the 6% grade? Where is that?
6% is basically from here to there.
So that's a lot of water coming down.
Yep.
Water is collected here, and there's a gully that allows the water to be captured. It's the roadway requirements in Mansfield allow you to go to 8%.
Yeah, I'm not here to debate the engineering. I'm just saying that those are issues I think the commission should well understand before they approve a plan, because those are all impacts on the wetlands.
Sure. No, fair statement. And that's why I think that in our first meeting, we had the snow storage area right on top of the replicated wetlands, which didn't work.
It was never in here, John, it was always just right here. So,
Close.
Yeah.
Close. All right, and show us
Could
where
I
the
just,
gra-
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So your snow storage is adjacent to the resource area?
No.
No?
No, it's been relocated.
Okay.
Although you've got another area down by the catch basins.
Correct.
And where the wetlands are in green shade?
The replication area?
No, the wetlands that you.
I mean, that's.
What's the significance of the?
July.
What's the significance of the green?
Really nothing, it's a landscape plan, more of a presentation plan.
Are those based on existing trees?
Let's see, existing trees, yes,
So the clusters that we see along the edge of the wetland are actually existing trees?
I believe so, yes.
One of the things the commission would want to consider also is that since you only have 2 drainage catch basins at the base of the slope, and someone indicated you're going to be sanding to control in the wintertime, that sand and silt's going to wash into those catch basins and likely clog, which is, so you should have an aggressive, I did not smirk when you were up there,
I'm
all
sorry.
right? I find that.
I apologize. The thing is that we prepared.
No. You can do what you want, but I did not smirk when you were making your
And I
presentation.
apologize.
All right. So.
Did you people receive this old file?
No,
Why not?
I don't know why we,
All the information is public, it's available,
Yeah,
the Conservation
we give it to
Commission
the town.
file.
That's the way it works.
All right. All right, thank you very much.
thank you for your time.
Thank you for your patience. Anything else, Mr. Mullin, anything to add?
I wasn't prepared to. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any other abutters, members of the public, concerned citizens? Any questions by the commission member? All right. So you're assenting to continue this until the June meeting?
June here.
And do the best you can to get us information after you and Mitch sit down together, because that, we're looking at that niche report, they've got a lot of questions there, and if they can be answered, that really helps us.
Right, and again, and I apologize for snarking, some of these questions I've had several times, and it's late and I'm tired.
All right,
You haven't had a meeting with the zoning board since our site walk.
I'm trying to remember the date. I can't remember if it was just before or I feel like it was like maybe
We didn't get
a
the-
few days before that
Just
site
before
walk, we
the-
had a ZBA.
I think it was the Tuesday before the site walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you haven't received any feedback from them subsequent to the site walk.
No,
Correct.
no, the first piece of feedback we're gonna have is Friday.
Is this Friday?
Yeah.
From the ZBA or from niche
From
engineering?
niche engineering.
Are you expecting any, I mean, when is the next zoning board of appeals meeting?
20th, following week.
Is the following week, okay.
Okay, Friday is the niche?
Yep.
What time?
10 o'clock.
All right, good.
Thanks a lot.
You all set? Thank you very much.
What's the next, what's the date? June?
Kathy, what's the date in June?
Next date is June 9th.
June 9th, okay. We shall see you then.
Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And that, I think, does that,
So,
that's it. Does that include our business? Does that include our business?
But let's,
It does.
there were people going to that, and I'm gonna ask you for
No, do we have any additional?
I was just wondering about whether that's a minor, whether they wrote about removing 20 additional trees.
What did they write? Refresh my memory.
I think you have a copy there. I sent everyone an email. It came after the packet. They needed to switch the path, so they asked if he needs file, or this is a letter for Ian State saying.
Did you have a
no
question?
subdivision.
Yes, I do have one, I don't want to
Oh,
interrupt.
good,
Do you have a
okay.
question about getting you the check for the reimbursement, for the check for the cost of the vernal pool?
Yes.
Would it be possible for you also to provide Mr. Holland with a copy of the contract? That was something that we always asked for with respect to peer review.
Sure.
The contract that existed between the town and Matt. We referenced that in the letter.
Okay.
Is that right?
Alfred, do you have a contract?
Doubting
We
whether-
didn't have a
I think
contract,
that's
we had a
I think it's
letter,
Was it just verbal?
I think it
a
was
letter,
just-
email exchange.
Whatever you had, just the evidence that you retained him,
Yeah.
that's all.
Kathy, you have all those, if you don't,
I
just
think
let
I
me
have the
know.
emails back and forth about.
Yeah.
Yeah, just somebody from the Conservation Commission wrote to Mr. Byrne and
Yes.
said, we'd like you to do this
That's correct.
work for us. That's what we did.
Okay.
That's fine.
And we'll reference that and send you the check.
Okay,
Kathy,
Great.
if you don't have that, let me know.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
It's 11:30, guys.
That's all?
Okay.
I'm up past my bedtime.
So,
Try and choose the town meeting.
Yes,
okay, wait, don't leave, you have to sign things.
Minor revisions to the tree removal plans required for this section of the trail.
This is for the sidewalk on Saturday from,
Did you read it?
no, I was just giving it.
Be careful when you cross the southbound exit ramp.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, this is for another site while we're here.
Sure.
This is from, who's partnering again with? For the Milton Muse project.
Oh, this is,
For Milton Muse, I thought this was done. I
No,
mean,
no, no,
gone,
the
like-
land that we're just dividing, that we're going on sidewalk
Yep.
Saturday.
Yep.
On Brush Hill.
What is,
With Aaron Gekrin.
yeah.
This is what, Bob Hannigan.
Oh, Jesus. We've got another sensitive archaeological area. Oh, my word.
was that,
This is the bike trail.
Oh,
And, you know,
Yeah.
if I sound cynical on the archaeological, they found some old house that was the original manager of some factory in Mattapan. And he lived there. And it was down about, the foundation was down about 6 feet. So they had to maneuver the bike trail around it. I said, well, somebody gonna get out and excavate it? Is an archaeological dig. No, we're just gonna leave it there. It's a foundation.
They were afraid of damaging it?
I
6
guess,
feet down?
Yeah, so now they're gonna take down an additional nine trees.
Oh, on that, yeah, right.
Some of the trees have grown. So we've got 9 additional trees are in the path of the trail that now fall within the 6 to 8 inch diameter at breast height. Additionally, 2 additional
Need
trees.
red oaks.
Well, no, they could probably take them. Look at this, we've got 9 6 to 8
Yeah.
diameter trees.
I'm not kidding.
And there's a 12 to 24 inch tree, which is a black locust, which I don't think we like.
No.
They're dirty and they're tough wood.
What was the one you talked about, a black cherry?
Cherry.
No, yeah.
Black cherry was the one you were talking?
Yes. Right.
So
I'm talking
is that
about
a
black
dirty
locust.
tree?
Oh, not
No.
at all. No.
Not at all.
Clean is awesome.
Good.
I love locusts though.
That's a lot of trees, isn't it?
It's almost 20 trees.
What
It's
is
Yeah.
just a minor
Oh,
modification.
really?
I don't
Black
think that's
locust?
minor.
I don't think it's mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, locust.
And that was 7 years ago, we agreed to.
Never
No,
got
no, not this one.
2008.
Can you buy locusts?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Really?
survey
It's not
was
easily.
done, remember? I know, it was.
Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting
it
to
was
know.
7 years ago.
Locust.
Locust, yeah.
I'll tell her she has to file something.
Was it black locust or just
Just
locust?
locust.
Yeah, or
There's the
maybe an
honey.
You're gonna
RDA
have to
would
blade
be
it with a
sufficient.
chainsaw like nothing.
That sounds perfect.
And if they're if they're 7 years out, I mean, our
No,
order
they're-
condition.
I think they're tree surveyors. Remember first they did the survey and then we had one through the walks?
Yeah.
And
but when's our order of condition?
Where there's nothing in the field but the
I would have to check on that. I think it was,
Because everything
You know,
else was
there's a
blown out or
DEP issue.
burned out or?
So all
Oh,
3-year
he's
permits
thinking-
were extended another.
right.
They go around and they avoid them.
Right.
It's like
people will.
ants go through and
so-
rip it all out. They leave those ones in place.
Anyway, they don't have to do a notice of intent, I don't think. Maybe an RDA? Or if they want to do an
Amendment?
amendment, just, you know,
It's like a big rock, right?
The other thing on the septic system, the reason I went after the
Oh, yeah.
garbage disposal was because if they had a garbage disposal, according to Presley,
All right, so we in,
field.
we done?
Are we
with
still
addition?
Oh, really?
discussion? Oh.
All right.
Yep. we have-
Okay.
So did we move to adjourn?
We haven't.
Yeah.
We have.
Second,
Done.
done.
If you have-
But don't leave yet because you guys have to.